So when we turned up on finals day, it was a totally different vibe. It was a tailwind, perfect, exactly what we'd been expecting for 4 years. And we knew what we wanted to do. We're going to go out hard. We're going to really take the race by the scruff of the neck. We're going to try and lead it. And when we went off the start in that final, first stroke, Tom Barris absolutely booted the hell out of that boat. I was like, hang on a minute. This is a fast start. But it was just manic. Like, it's rough, it's kind of frantic. There's bits of splash and this and that going on. Italy caught a massive boat stopper just as they had taken the lead. I remember the last sort of 10 strokes thinking, this is my last 10 strokes I'm going to do at British Rowing. We're so close. We can win a medal here. And we crossed the line and just heard a beep. And then like, beep, beep, beep. And initially it was like, we've screwed up. We've nailed this race almost perfectly and we've just finished fourth. A moment later, I heard a big roar from behind, looked up and saw a scoreboard and saw GBR next to number 2. We went mental in that boat.
Hey, what is up? Welcome to Last Stroke Counts. We're in a pretty special place today for a very special episode with our first Olympic medalist. Please welcome Jack Beaumont to the podcast.
Well, thanks for coming, Jack.
Well, thanks very much for coming to me. Well, I drove a hard bargain when you said, oh, we record in Oxford. I said, well, I'm not doing it in Oxford. I work in Henley. I live in Maidenhead. But thanks very much for coming to, well, all of our club.
Yeah.
Great to be here. Great to be here with you all.
We did our first kind of test one here, but we didn't have good lights, and it just didn't go very well at all.
The mics got lost. I had to piece together the audio. We just scrapped it, and then we started recording in Oxford. It was just easier.
And for the purposes of anyone watching or listening, we actually so there's been some makeshift lighting done in here. Tom's climbed up and put some cushions over the windows because it's really bright outside, and we looked pretty pale, didn't we?
Basically, Pete does technical stuff and I'm on logistics. So paint cans and sofa cushions. I'm doing that bit.
Yeah, we make do.
Yeah.
Well, I'm really excited for today's episode. Obviously, when we spoke about creating this podcast, you were literally one of the first people that came to mind. Obviously, you're an idol of mine and a total legend of the sport, total legend of this club. So I think it's just going to be great to have a chat. And obviously, you've done some pretty impressive things. You've got an amazing record. I think
let's go. I mean, usually I feel bad that I can't memorize people's record, but this one is it's pretty impressive. So 2 junior world championships, 2010, 2011, 4 under 23 world championships, including a bronze in the double. That was 2012 to 2015. 3 senior world championships, including a silver in the quad in 2017. 9 back-to-back Henley wins from 2012 to 2021, which is unbelievable. We thought it was 5 or 6, but 9, that's just unreal. And then obviously to finish 2 Olympic Games with Rio and Tokyo, 5th at Rio and 2nd with the silver medal in Tokyo. So, I mean, that's just the career, to end all career. That's unbelievable, mate.
It was an awesome time. I loved it. I loved it so much. And stepping away was a difficult thing to do. If I could go back to being 20 years old and do that sort of 7 years again, 100%, I'd do it in a heartbeat.
Yeah,
I would have done it in a heartbeat. It was great.
It's better. I met when you're 20, it's there's no other pressure. You don't have to have a house. No one's telling you need a good job. You can just go for it and just see how it goes.
It was so cool, and to do it with such great people as well, right?
Yeah.
The guys today are flying off to Lucerne. Okay, I chose to not still be doing that, but there's a bit of me that would love to be out in Lucerne and flying off around the world to go and race against the best in the world. It was a cool lifestyle.
Yeah, I can imagine. Awesome. And I mean, with the success you've had as well, that's just, the icing on the cake, I guess.
Well, this kind of record only deserves one reaction before we get started into your story.
Oh yeah. I think it'd been if we'd not managed to get the silver medal in Tokyo.
That's a bit of a well-known Jack catchphrase around Leander.
Jack noise.
Yeah.
I communicate in noises. I don't use words, just sounds.
No, I remember being peak and trough with the 2 ones that I can still hear you.
And they actually both mean the same thing.
I remember that conversation you trying to explain to someone in the Leander crew room that
the best thing you can ever do is talk in a way that no one can understand.
Yes. That no one can pull you up on it.
Yeah, so it's well, that's not, you don't understand what I meant. It's their fault, not mine.
Exactly. Cool. So should we,
Yeah.
as we normally start, like talk about how you got into rowing? It's the first one.
Okay, so my dad was an Olympic rower. He's an Olympian from the Seoul Olympics, and he finished in 4th place. And I grew up as a young kid thinking that's normal. Like everyone's dad probably went to the Olympics, right? Because my dad did. And then I started to realize it wasn't normal, and that actually it was pretty cool what he'd done. I was around rowing from a young age. So it was Henley Regatta last week. I've probably been going every year. Well, as long as I can remember, I've been going. I remember as a young kid watching the ladies plate and laughing at the fact that there was a bunch of guys in an event called the ladies and finding it kind of weird. So I knew about the sport. I remember sort of getting autographs of the men's 4 just before the Athens Olympics when they won here at Henley, and sort of knew what was going on, was surrounded by it, but wasn't that interested in doing it myself until I was about 10 years old, and my dad brought me down to the Rowing Club in Maidenhead and did the Learn to Row course. It was pretty fun. I splashed around a bit, caught a load of crabs, did that, was rowing in these sort of tub boats, but it was pretty nice and enjoyed it. And Maidenhead was my first stop, and it was a great club. I really, really loved rowing there, apart from my first ever race. So my first ever race, we did Maidenhead Junior Regatta, which is a lovely event. It's really for beginners, so everyone gets a second race. Like even if you lose your heat, they build like a repechage system, so you can kind of lose your first one and have a chance to go again. And we did that. We went through the repechage in my quad and somehow made the final. But at that age, boys and girls raced against each other, and we got through the final against Maidenhead Junior girls. Thought we were going to nail it because it's the girls, and we got absolutely smoked. So that was a sort of my baptism of fire into rowing.
Yeah, that's like sometimes it goes that way. I've had funny races, like when you get matched up in novice events, and I've been like a J14 crew against like some big university lads, and we were sort of scared on the start. I think like they look absolutely huge, and then they just caught like 6 crabs in the first 6 strokes, and then we buggered off. Like it's different down the bottom. Like there's so much skill involved as well.
Well, yeah, exactly. It's like, well, we probably weren't even as strong as those girls, because I think don't quote me, I'm not a scientist, but I think that in that age, young girls develop a little bit quicker than boys too. But anyway, they absolutely brushed us under the carpet.
Well, I bet they have never let that go.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what. There's my next couple of races later. I was racing in a single at Pangbourne Junior Sculls. I think I came about 4. The people I lost to were Tom Barris, who's pretty good now, very good. My teammate in the Tokyo Olympics. I lost to Tom Barris. I lost to a guy called Rupert Chitty, and I lost to his sister Anastasia Chitty, who and she was in the team with me for years, right? She never let me forget it.
Yeah.
But I never let her forget the fact that I actually thought she was a boy.
There's a trade-off, yeah. That's one expression that I haven't heard in a while, brushed under the carpet.
Yeah, you got absolutely brushed.
Yeah, the Leander lingo comes back.
It doesn't. It only makes sense to those who are speaking it, but it doesn't make much sense to anyone else around it. In general, rowing has its own language, which is absolutely insane.
It does have its own language.
When I started coaching a little bit after I finished, and like all these words that you've just used, so like just like there's been part of your language, and then you like realize like, oh no, everyone's looking at me like they haven't got a clue what I'm saying. I'm having to explain like, oh, so
it's like the jargon. It's like even words just like split and like we say, when you're setting up your boat, you say you need to move your feet, but it's not your feet, it's shoes and foot plate.
Yeah.
But you say you're going to move your feet. There's lots of things you kind of get used to saying that aren't right, and to a passerby or a beginner, it's wrong, confusing, and we just kind of get drawn into this laziness, I think, of
just
phrases.
So I guess you're in that world. It's what we talked about before. It's one of those sports where like no one's like half in. Like when you as soon as you like fall for rowing, like that's it. Like kind of becomes your world. So like you just spend all your time with rowers, and like we used to like try and ban rowing chat on a night out, and then half an hour later someone's talking about the 500 meter splits, and you're like,
it's impossible. No, it's impossible. It's your passion.
Yeah,
and you don't half row, do you?
Yeah.
Even now, I've like. Look at my hands, like they're all rough. I still crack on and go and do quite a bit of rowing, and even though I don't do it full time, I'm wondering about it. I'm thinking about it and imagining how it feels in boats. We all drive over bridges and look and imagine, can you row on it? Like, I think we all do that.
Yeah.
What's the conditions?
That's the fact.
Yeah, you're hoping to see some really flat, some like, lake porn.
Or if you see a nice bit and then you're like, I'll get out on that.
I think the only exception is the tideway, though. You'd never drive over that and think, shall I?
There are occasions still. Well, when you were allowed to drive over Hammersmith Bridge, you'd look over and be like, "Well, that actually looks all right. Wouldn't mind an Eight's Head today."
Just about any other day apart from Eight's Head, generally the tideway looks all right. It's only on Eight's Head does it kick up. Cool. So Maidenhead then, that took you to Junior Worlds then with that cup.
Yeah. So as I said, learned to row when I was about 10. Kind of took a little bit of time with it on the back seat. I didn't want to, there were so many things you want to do when you're that age, right? You want to play rugby, you want to play hockey, you want to swim, you want to hang out with your mates. Like, you don't, and rowing was something I did maybe once a week or not even every week, but it was fun. But as I got a bit older, I started to realize that I was quite competitive and I would be good at pushing myself. And there was quite a decent bunch of like older juniors than me in the club. So there was and they were all being coached by a guy called Tom Drost, who's now at Clare's Court School.
Total legend. We're going to get him on.
Absolute legend. And there was one time I'd been racing at Marlow Regatta, the one in Marlow, right? And I don't know what I'd been racing in, junior J14 singles or something. And I got a call from Josty saying that they were seat racing the following morning for their Henley quads, and asked if I fancied getting involved. I was like, well, yeah, all right. So I went down to Dorney Lake the next day and we had a couple of quads out, and I got switched with one of the guys that was in the B crew at the time. And I won the seat race, which was an absolute shock. And that meant that I was going to be in one of the crews to try and qualify for the 40 Challenge Cup. And I didn't qualify. So that was 2009. That was my first ever run down the Henley track. We didn't qualify. It's 2008. Yeah, 2008. I didn't qualify. We're pretty disappointed. But from then on, I kind of thought, well, I can race up an age group against these sort of people, or a few age groups as it was then. And I'd like to push it. And Josty was a great coach. He knew how to make us end ourselves. So he taught us to be able to just go and go and go and go. And some of the training was seriously hard. Like, I remember like throwing up after ergo sessions, and I continued doing that all the way through my career, but it was like there were sessions that I would dread, but we'd go and do them. And like, if there's one thing I learned from him, it was like, you can absolutely turn up and nail yourself, and if you're willing to do that, you're always going to get the best from yourself. So I had a great time there. Went to 2 Junior World Championships. We finished 4th and 7th, both of which we were disappointed in. But it was all part of, like, in the sort of British rowing at the time, sculling was kind of on the up. Like, the British sculling team had been bouncing around in similar sorts of positions to where we came. Hadn't won any World Championship medals in the quad yet, and it was sort of a project coming on with a lot of world-class dart athletes, and we were excited to be a part of it.
Yeah, no, I think around that time we spoke with John, like in 2009, my first under 23s, John, they didn't even take like a quad.
Exactly. The same year they didn't take a junior quad either.
Yeah, and then 2010 they bring a full team, and you could kind of see the rise of it then. And like even the same thing at Leander, like when I joined in 08, like there was no scullings team. Like people didn't do it.
Which is crazy to think now when you think, like, if you think of development sculling, where would you do it? If you have a brain cell, you'd be at Leander. Yeah. Right?
Yeah, like you literally from that, I mean, I can't remember when the first, what was probably one, I know it would have been more than 10 years ago, the first time they won the quad with like Jack Hockley and Phil Turner and then those boys. When was that? Like 10?
Yeah, that would have been before, that's probably 2009.
9, yeah. I mean, yeah.
Sorry, I've got my phone's on loud. I thought I had it on silent.
No worries.
And it's Will Satch. Great. Saying something stupid, I'm sure. That student of academia that you can keep that.
Shout out, Will. Come on when you fancy it. We'd love to have you on, obviously. From that point onwards, it was like Queen Mary win after win after win. So crazy to think that like we weren't doing it before.
Well, especially you see that like in other countries, like for example, where I'm from in Poland, sweep is more of on the background, and sculling is like very much in the foreground. And I think that's like more of the case for more countries, like because you're sort of like more self-dependent. You can go out in a single. It's easy to put together a double. You don't need that many people.
I think I've got a theory about this, and it is true. Like at least throughout my rowing career, when we went to the European Championships, it was more or less the same people that you race at the World Championships in the final. If I look to our final in Tokyo, I think it's only Australia who were not from Europe in there. Other than that, it was pretty much the same as the European Championship final. One pretty different. My theory is, it makes sense. You can just go out in your single, and then, we've got someone else go on a double, go out in a quad. But I think here, a lot of rowing comes from universities and schools. Maybe there's lots of people, and what's the most effective way to get lots of people out in the water? Probably eights.
Yeah.
I think that's my theory of why British rowing's ended up, being stronger in sweep, because, for us, it was pretty much it's not completely this, but it was pretty much the sweep team were the ones that came from schools and mostly private schools. The sculling team tended to be the ones that came from rowing clubs and state schools. It's not a complete split like that. There are people that are different, like I think Morgan Boulding, he definitely learned in a club. Jacob Dawson learned in the club. But for the most part, it does tend to be a bit school and club.
I think
like that.
Yeah, well, if you're at school, it's PE, isn't it? And that was sort of a thing this year about letting clubs into the PE, because for a long time it was a school. Early on,
it was strictly a school-only event until this year, right?
Yeah,
they're very happy to see that they can allow clubs. We would have loved to enter it as Maidenhead Rowing Club.
Yeah,
we would not have been competitive because we hardly ever had 8 boys. But what a cool thing!
Yeah. I mean, I probably also a little bit got sort of Pinson and Redgrave to blame for doing so well in the sweep side, and then my generation coming up, all of you just behind as well. Like that's who everyone wanted to be. Like you play football, you want to be Messi. Like if you were in the UK, you want to be Pinson. I can't remember what it was in his book. I think it was one of them books where he says some American guy was like obsessed with them and kept telling his girlfriend about Pinson and Redgrave. She said she thought it was, I probably butchered this story, but like she thought it was this like really unfortunately named guy, like Pinson N Redgrave. So it's like one person.
Kept going on about it that much.
Yeah, I think it definitely like can come down to the numbers, because there is just so many more like pool of athletes. The pool of athletes to choose from in this country is just so much larger than like you can find pretty much anywhere else, but American universities, probably Australia, New Zealand, and like you said, maybe like Germany at a push. So
yeah, well, you say it goes to the theory. Your theory is supported by the fact that other countries that are good in eights, big countries like America, Canada.
Yeah. Well, that's it. Like and also it's very expensive to have an 8 going around. It's very hard to if you're a smaller team with a smaller budget or whatever, it's like, well, you can have a quad. You can have a quad and have 4 people going on all the camps. You can have 4 people doing all this. 8, all of a sudden, it's quite a big chunk, right?
Yeah. And the boats.
And the cocks as well. So there's like now people.
Yeah. Although, that's one thing I'd have loved to have done is race at Henley in an 8 or race at the World Championships in an 8, because it does look really cool. It does look really fun. And the race is quite a bit shorter.
It's bloody fun.
There were some times when I would race in a World Cup in a single, and I'd race twice on Friday, like heat and course final, semi-final on Saturday and final on Sunday. And each race was, say, 7 minutes long. So 28 minutes of racing. And the 8 would have 2 5.5-minute races, one on Friday and one on Saturday. 11 minutes of racing. On Monday, we'd have exactly the same training. I was like, come on, man, I've had a way bigger weekend than that. And I'd come finish like in the B final or something, having absolutely slogged myself. And they've just, had a nice, one race, day off, another race, see you later.
Yeah.
Probably one as well.
I was very happy hiding in the middle of the under 23 eights. Yeah.
That's a good point.
Cool. So, I mean, I guess then the next step moving on from juniors, like what, did you have an idea of taking it further? Was there...
How did you find out about Leander? Like, did Josty push you to like come here, or like what sparked you to...
No. So, well, I was always aware of Leander, right? This is the most famous rowing club in the world, and my dad rowed here too. So I always knew about it, and knew it as sort of half the British rowing team was from here, still are. By the time I was coming up to the end of juniors, most of the GB sculling team was from here. I was coming towards the end of my time as a junior. I was planning to go to university at University of London, which is where I ended up going anyway. I watched the sort of last bits into the London Olympics and was so gripped by it. They had the sort of story of the British 8 and German 8, and they were tussling. Although the German 8 would always come out on top, it was really exciting to see. We really all hoped that in London the British 8 would go and do them. There was also Alan Campbell sort of scratching around like close to the medals, like can he do it? That was really exciting. And then there was Catherine Granger's double, her and Anna Watkins. Again, was like, you know, quite exciting to see whether they could win the gold medal.
And fifth time lucky.
Yeah, and watching those stories developing as a young rower was really exciting. Sort of tuning into all the World Cups, and because I lived in Maidenhead, it was very local to go to the Olympics. It was 6 miles away or something from my house to go and watch the rowing. So I watched as much as I could.
I think it's still SL6, so that's the same postcode as Maidenhead.
It might actually be, it might be an SL6. It might be SL4. I'm not sure. Big up the SL6. So I went to go and watch as much as I could. I'd been working in the sports bar that summer. I had some tickets and then spent pretty much everything I'd earned on buying tickets outside the venue from touts, because I really wanted to be there. And I watched it all and was so inspired that I actually withdrew my application for university and kind of decided this is what I want to do. I want to try and be there in 4 years' time. And it was a no-brainer. Where would I try and do that? Because most of the scullers came from Leander. I'd seen the Leander quads winning the Prince of Wales Cup then for a couple of years. So I thought, well, this is the natural step. If I can go there and up my training a bit, that's going to put me on the path to Rio.
And you did it as well. Like, you ended up in Rio, but we'll get to that.
Yeah, by the skin of my teeth.
Well, it still counts. So then you've joined Leander, and then was that like straight after you finished being a junior and like in your first year of under 23s?
Yeah, no. It was actually my second year of under 23s, because I was in the age group where your last year of school is actually your first year as an under 23. So I did that. So I went to the under 23 World Championships in like Upset in a double with Johnny Wilson. We just missed out on the final, which was annoying, but we won the B final with a good race. But no, so I went to Leander. I didn't really know what to expect, because I knew it as this like high performing place, and the room we're in, like really smart library and quite posh and all of that. And I was quite, I guess, a little bit intimidated when I first turned up on my first day, or expected to be intimidated. But I turned up and it was like the most fun, most welcoming, loveliest, awesome club. And also just straight after the Olympics was sort of rubbing shoulders with a bunch of the people that just won gold medals. Like people like Alex Gregory were kicking about, or Pete Reed, and they were really, really actually awesome to have around. So within a week, I sort of fell in love with it here. I was like, this is definitely, it feels like home and feels like a great club. Really got stuck into training, and it was exhausting to start with, because we were used to kind of like junior training was hard. We'd train hard, but it was just totally different volume of training.
Yeah.
So I remember sort of doing maybe like a weight session and then a 2-hour bike ride in the hills, in the Chiltern Hills as a squad, and going home and like almost falling asleep eating my lunch because it was such hard work.
Yeah.
But I fell in love with it and found myself very quickly getting personal bests on the rowing machine, like really within weeks of being here.
I remember the same thing. Yeah, just like, I don't know if I've said on the podcast before, but it sounds stupid to say, but I remember those first few weeks at Leander. Like, I remember sort of waking up on Thursday and being like I'm not going to make Saturday. I think I might die. I'm really, really struggling here.
Yeah.
The other was when I first turned at Leander, I was the same thing. I was like, right, I'm going to Leander. Like, I'm going to be around like absolute professionals. It's time to step my game up. Like, this is going to be like so serious. And the first morning I turn up, like, I think I kind of came up a bit early, like early August, late September, whatever. Caroline found me. She's like, I think some of the boys are in the crew room. I'll go and show you up there. Brings me into the crew room, and there's Tom Wilkinson and Owen Davies in there, and they're on the computer and they're looking at photos of the night out they just had on Saturday, with some like absolute just like atrocities. I can't even say what camera was going on. I was like, oh, okay, like, no, they're still normal people. They still have a laugh. Like,
yeah, but I remember that same feeling. Like, just when I found out that I joined Leander, then I had to like move to England. Obviously, I didn't really speak that much English when I first came. And I just remember like training over the summer, thinking like, I'm not going to survive winter. Like this is going to be so hard. And then I found the training program on the board. And obviously I didn't know because I haven't like met any other juniors or like met any other people who were training there. And I just saw the training program on the board and it just said some things in the language that I barely understood. And I just started doing the senior training program for the summer as a junior. So that got me pretty fit to start the year.
I absolutely ruined myself trying to get fit because I spoke to Tim Bainbridge, started telling me about this 6-minute bench pull test. Oh, when you get to Leander, they've got this like 6-minute bench pull test. So I set it up at home and I just went for it, having like never really done anything like that.
Yeah.
Next day I wake up like I physically can't straighten my arms. I'm having to like lie down on my arms to like get them straight. I tried to go out in the single and like I couldn't even
All T-Rex.
Yeah, it was full gone.
Yeah, but like you said, it was such a welcoming atmosphere and just the ability to, well, for me, it wasn't straight after the Olympics that athletes were kicking around. It was more like in the evenings when they came for like the crew dinners and things like that. That was just awesome.
It was because a lot of people moved to Henley to be here, and the club was so good subsidising meals. Like you could eat every meal of the week here, apart from a Sunday evening, right? So you would. It was cheaper than doing it yourself. They cooked for you. It was really nutritious food. So of course, I was here every meal of the week, and in the evenings, I was hanging out with all the other rowers, and some of the ones from the national team would be there, and you'd end up mixing and learning a lot from each other, and just getting to know each other so well. I loved it. And that winter, we had the Youth Olympic Festival. And that was coming up in Australia, and I'd been selected for that. And in that event, we raced in singles, quads, and eights. So we mixed. It was like a one squad, which broke down into a 4, a quad, a single, double, lightweight double. And I won a gold medal in the single in that event. And that was a big motivator, I suppose, because it was like, oh, hang on a minute, if I can win a medal here, and I'm gonna. One person I absolutely nailed in that race is really good now in the Aussie 4 called Alex Hill, but sorry, but he's very good now, Olympic champion in the 4. It was great, and I remember coming back from that like, wow, with this just 3 months of training at Leander, I'm nailing it here. Came back and started just pulling 30-minute ergo scores that were actually better than I ever did in the national team when I was training in Caversham, which is, well, take that as you will.
That shows volume, yeah.
And sort of started to think, well, this is paying off. This is the right place to be. I'm enjoying it so much. Bring it on. It was so exciting.
Yeah, I think for me as well. Like, I was very lucky in that time when I came to Leander. There was that's one thing about rowing. It's very easy to like measure your progress. I think that's why people really get sucked in, because you can see your 2K PB or 5K, or you lifted a couple kilos more on your bench press. There's all these little like markers of how you're getting better.
Yeah.
And if you can't measure yourself against basically your previous course, there's always like someone in the team that you can beat or push off of, and just sort of like measure whether like you moving up in the ranks or not.
And you go junior worlds and you get under 23s. It's really, it is really good.
You feel that progression, don't you? And what also was cool, like I was having a gap year. Most of my friends were at university. I was thinking sometimes I'd be sort of out rowing in my single and on the river, sort of, I don't know, 8 in the morning, halfway through a session, kind of tired, but it was like, autumn time is absolutely beautiful here in autumn. Yeah. The water tends to always be flat in October here as well, which is, I don't know what's going on. But I would be there thinking, my mates are probably either hungover or in a lecture or both right now. Why would I want to be doing that when I can be out here? This is so cool. Yeah, it was so cool.
I definitely had, again, like all my friends went off. I came straight from school to Leander, and a lot of my friends went off to uni, and I definitely like felt like, oh, I'm missing out. I'm working so hard, and I don't get to see. Don't go home as much, go see my mates as much. But I speak to them on the phone, I'd be like, oh, what's uni like? Like, what are you doing? You're like, oh, we're getting absolutely fucked up, we're getting pissed. Like, oh, that sounds fun. Like, what else are you doing? And they're like, wow, like, well, then we got pissed again on Friday, and then we got pissed again on Saturday. And I was like, yeah, well, we get pissed sometimes here. Like, occasionally we get, but I'm also kind of doing this really cool thing of rowing. Yeah. So I was like, at that point, I didn't feel like I was missing out anymore.
Exactly. And like, obviously, like the times that you do get to like let go and like blow off the steam, like the annual dinner after Force Head, or like the Christmas party, like it's probably better than just like regular going to the pub.
I was telling Pete a story the other day. Marcus Bateman popped up on Instagram. He said, oh, who's Marcus Bateman? I said, oh God,
who's Marcus Bateman?
I was sat on the table with him at one after the dinners after the 4. It's like the annual dinner, isn't it?
Yeah.
And him and Tommy Burton were like trying to feed each other cake until one of them ends up being sick on the table, and they've just been chugging red wine, and it was just like it all went absolute.
No,
I hope I won't get him in trouble for that. It's been a while, about 15 years. I think it'll be all right.
I think the management has changed over by now. Yeah.
But it was cool. Like rowing here was just the best. Like that year culminated with us winning the Prince of Wales Cup, and with a record time. So I'd won the Forley the year before with my school, which was awesome. Like so cool. And I'd first not qualified for the Forley in 2008, and then eventually won in 2012. Right, so it's quite a few times trying to get through that.
Yeah.
And but then the following year, making the step up in the Prince of Wales was probably some of the most fun I've ever had rowing. Like we actually rowed together again this year, the four of us who won that, and we weren't anywhere near as fast. But also, of course, right, the event's a lot better, and we have not been training in any way the same way that we used to. But it was so cool just to at the time we trained really hard. We went on training camps and were probably sculling. I was probably sculling as well as I ever did at the time, and I can't believe now, thinking when I was 19, I was so much faster than I am now when I'm 29, right? But it was so cool. And actually, at some points, we probably got a bit ahead of ourselves, but we were thinking we're probably not that far off the international standard, right? Like maybe a few lengths, but it started to make in my head like what had seemed like a huge gap when I was sitting in the London Olympic stands was actually very quickly quite a small gap. And hugely motivating to try and sort of take some scalps and get into the senior squad.
Yeah, absolutely. It just feels like basically when you're around those people, it just makes it possible, because if you're sat at a table with people who've done it and who are currently like doing it at the highest level, like going to the Olympics, winning world championship medals, if you're at the same table, why couldn't you be doing the same thing? Especially if you're like under the same program, they probably went on a similar journey that you're embarking. And yeah, it's just super fun. It doesn't just feel liberating, but also empowering, like big time.
Yeah. Oh, and sometimes we did some quite cool stuff. So because we're quite close to the British Rowing Training Centre in Caversham here, like the following year, our quad was we were all under 23s trialing for the under 23 team. We didn't end up going to the Worlds as a quad. We went as two of them went in the quad and two of us in the double. But we were invited by the British Rowing, by Jürgen, to come and do some pieces with the senior men's quad. And that year, the senior men's quad, they got a silver medal at the World Champs, right? So how cool for us as like 19 and 20 year olds to go up and sort of try and take some scalps with them. Now, they absolutely did us, but it was so cool to line up with them as they were preparing, like we were on a level playing field. Like they were preparing for their World Cup, we were preparing for Henley, and we'd go and race each other. That sort of overlap and rubbing shoulders with the best was, that I think that almost brought more than some of the training sessions did.
Yeah, being around them. Yeah, I remember the first time I sat on an ergo at Leander, and generally we'd been in our own group, but I think I was doing an evening one, and just after I'd started a 12k, Ian Lawson sits down on one side, who's Olympics in Athens, wasn't it? Single scull in Athens, and then Steve Williams sits down on the other side, and I'm just like 19-year-old me, just being like, what is happening? Like this is
those moments were really cool here. That's Leander's different to many clubs, and I understand when some people think, oh, that's like they don't like it or whatever for some reasons, but as a developing athlete, there's just nothing like it. Like I remember, the same. When you're these people who were your heroes, you're seeing on TV, they're still your heroes, right? You look at them, look at what they did. Even now, you're like, wow, that's so cool. And the fact that they would, I don't know, have dinner in the same room as you, that was like so inspiring.
That was my first. I came to the trial weekend at Leander, and so like turned up on that was that time I saw Wilco and looking at all his photos. But the first time I had a meal here, they ordered me like a crew main, which at the time was £1, and it's massive. It's like, it's at least a double portion what someone would consider dinner.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, this is awesome. And Ian Lawson comes in, sits down, and he's a beast of a man. He's got tree trunk of legs anyway. Sits down, orders a crew main, butters up like 6 pieces of bread, smashes this crew main with 6 pieces of bread, like mops it up. And then the next time the waitress come in, he was like, I need some more. Can you fill that? Like goes and has a second round. I was like,
yeah, that's crazy. I mean, just thinking about what you said, there's probably not a lot of other sports where you get to do something like this, like racing side by side with like someone currently competing at like the world championship level, and just training and just existing like amongst those athletes. Like think about like probably football, even in the academy, probably like the developing athletes don't get to like mix that much with.
Yeah, I don't know about other sports really with it, but I'm grateful for the opportunities I had to do that, and ended up the next year, or at the end of that season. So I'd done the final trials and actually came in the A final. So I came sixth in 2014, and in my mind that meant, right, they should be testing me for the boats. Why are they not? In fact, officially I came fifth because Alan Campbell got disqualified in the final for a false start. but I finished sixth. But the sort of, I ended up, although I didn't get tested for a proper crew that year, I did get invited to be the reserve for the World Championships. So I went out to all of their camps. Well, I didn't go to the altitude camp. I was racing at the under 23 Worlds then, but I went out to Portugal for their final camp and then went out to World Championships. And on that last camp, I was actually used a few times. So I'd be in the quad and training in the sort of senior World Championship quad when they'd just won the last couple of World Cups going into the World Championships. What a cool thing to do. And that started to, I guess that, and then being with them at the World Championships, that was sort of my door opening into the senior team. But the sort of moments before that of just being able to show, have, a few of the guys knew who I was. I had particular people in the squad that I was kind of gunning for at all of the trials and hoping that I'd be able to get one over on and show that I can do it.
Yeah.
I'm really grateful for all those opportunities when I was young, and I just don't feel like I'd have had the same opportunity if I didn't row here, because here the experience the coaches had, the overlap of athletes between here and the national team, like it was what I was doing, the coaches had seen 100 times before with different athletes, and they knew exactly what to do. It really felt like they knew what to do. Watch that. They knew what my boat should be set up on. They would say that it just seemed like they always said exactly the right thing before an ergo test that meant I'd get the right strategy. Like before I do a trial in Boston, any of this, it's like it's almost like they were inside my head and knew exactly what I needed, and they got it right every time. So I can't thank this club. I can't thank Leander enough for all the support that got me in.
It's funny the way you talk about it. It's you can tell that it's you weren't, for a period of time, you weren't trying to prove it to anyone else. It's almost kind of proved to yourself that you're supposed to be there. It was like you were like building belief in yourself. Like, oh, I am meant to be here. I can sit in this quad and not mess it up. And like we talked about that a lot before. Like you can want it, or you could be fantastic. You can have raw talent, but like so much of it is the mental of just like understanding that actually I could be there.
I think it was kind of half that and half the opposite. I think it was half like, a bit like I don't want to mess it up, but also I felt like I should be there too, because I'd performed well in the trials. A bit of me was like, come on, why are they not giving me more of a shot? Right. And now looking back, I get it, because like I just done one good trial. Like the others probably just had a bad day and they've seen all their data all year, right? But sometimes I was kind of thinking, if we want to have the best crews, why are we not testing everyone all the time? And so but when you're young, I was so excited and motivated and driven. I didn't want to be here. I wanted to be there, and I want to be there now.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it speaks volumes to Leander and like the expertise of coaches to basically push someone who's still like in the middle of the under 23s, like right in the mix with like the senior team. You don't really get those kind of opportunities if you don't end up at like the right training facility with like such great support, like 1 pound physio, all the cooked dinners, and it's just brilliant.
Yeah, like to be honest, so at one point I was thinking about going to a US university, right? And well, firstly I got told by David Tanner probably that I shouldn't go, because at that time no one had gone and come back and been in the senior team yet, and it was seen as kind of, if you go off to the States, that's you done. If I'd gone, I certainly wouldn't have gone to the Rio Olympics, because that's the year I'd have graduated. So, but the coming here meant that I had every opportunity to really take my rowing to the level I wanted to get to.
Yeah, I mean, again, like talking about all these things, like you said, that like having the right thing said at the right time, the right set on your boat, like we've talked about this before, like what kind of the way I describe it's like a cheat code, like you get to these people that have been there and done that and have all this knowledge, you get to come up as an 18, 19, 20-year-old and like get access to this stuff straight away. And like, you're not having to like spend years and years working out for yourself. And we sort of talked about with this podcast, like if we can share a bit of that knowledge in terms of like, obviously like mental fortitude and things like that, and like maybe give a few other people some of those cheat codes so that they didn't have to spend 5 or 6 years working on that bit. And then they're busy working on the next bit, the next bit, the next bit. And you can kind of push the sport forward.
Yeah. And we're so privileged as well though. But I think, you know, there's also one of the guys I work with, he talks a bit about social mobility and how we try and get people from different backgrounds into different places. And he has this theory about sliding doors. And I apply this a little bit to my rowing career because a lot of the things that I've achieved, I was in the right place at the right time for. And you have to be the right person in the right place at the right time. Yeah. But if I wasn't in the right place at the right time, wouldn't have got them. Like a few of my medals I won at World Cups or European Championships was actually a last minute sort of spare being called in. Same with going to the Olympics in Rio. Like if it could have been someone else at that moment, or that door might not have opened at that time. And there are these sort of moments where being in, there's luck. There's there's luck involved in everything.
You have to accept that it's absolutely hard work, and you have to work harder than anyone else and turn up day after day. But also, there's always going to be a bit of luck there. But so let's talk about
hard work creates opportunities and luck. So obviously, how did you like find going for like the senior team and like trying to make the Rio Olympics while still being an under 23? Like obviously, you were racing at World Cups whilst you were still being an under 23.
Yeah,
going on senior camps. I'm just interested to like see how you were like.
I wasn't interested in being an under 23 at all. I didn't care about it. I really didn't care about it. I didn't want to do it. I was actually really annoyed. In 2013, fine, like under 23. 2012, I was at school, want to be under 23. 2013, fine, or do under 23. By 2014, I wanted to be a senior. I'd come sixth in the senior trials. I wanted to be there. I didn't want to scratch around. Like, I know the under 23 World Championships is a big event, but if you want to be in the Olympics, I wanted to be in the team for longer, right? And then by 2015, I was training full time in the senior squad. I just wanted an opportunity to seat race for a crew. I raced in the European Championships because Charles Cousins was injured and we won a bronze medal. So more and more of these things started happening that made me feel like at the time I should be given a shot in one of the boats. So by then, that year, it actually felt a little bit insulting at the time that they weren't letting me trial for the boats or seat race for any of them. They, you know, the double and quad just stayed the same as the year before. And I went off to do the under 23 single, but no one asked me if I wanted to do the single. I didn't even want to run the single. I hated racing in the single. So it was like, why are they picking me for this? I'd kind of rather be doing a quad or a double, but I just had my eyes set on the senior team. So really it was like, how many times do I have to knock on that door before it knocks down? And who knows what might have happened in 2016 season, but ended up having a big accident in the summer of 2015. I had a boat smack into my back.
Not just a boat, it was the fastest boat, arguably at the time.
Fastest boat in the world, smashed into my back. Which was a big situation, right? It broke a load of bones in my spine, was out of the boat for about 5 months. And that set back my progress quite a bit, as in terms of trying to get into the Olympic squad. Maybe I'd have been able to make it, probably, maybe not, who knows. But my focus was always that. The under 23 Worlds, it was something I did, but it was never really like, this season I really want to do that. I was used to rowing above my years, right? So when I was a junior, you know, tried to qualify in the 40 when I was 14, didn't qualify, but I was used to always racing with people older. So the age group events were kind of, as a junior, that was like the biggest thing on earth. But once I was under 23, I think someone had told me before that the step up from junior to under 23s was like not that big, even though actually it was really big. So in my mind, I always had this thing that like once you're a junior, you're really a senior.
Yeah.
Once you're not a junior anymore, you're an adult, right? So I didn't want to be in these boxes anymore.
I think that just goes to show like that's like a quality obviously you have, that you have just that single-minded, like bloody-minded focus to get to the top. And I think like sometimes if you're going to set out to be the absolute best in the world at something, like you're going to have to piss some people off.
Yeah.
You're going to have to think about yourself. You're going to have to be annoying without you're not trying to put anyone down by saying, I don't want to be an under 23, but it's I want to be, I want to be somewhere else. And like, you have to maintain that focus. And you hear other people speak online about it, like Goggins and Jocko and stuff. It's all about like, people are going to think you're a bit mental.
That's it.
You are going to have to actually like kind of turn the screw, like shut the doors, like shut everyone out, and actually really just kind of go to a place where no one else is willing to go.
And even when Angus Groom and I raced in the under 23 double, it wasn't that we didn't want to be in a double together. It's just we thought we wanted to try and be as good as the seniors, right? We were like, and we did the under 23s, and we did race the seniors, and they did beat us, right? But we wanted, and the following year, I wasn't even training at Leander anymore. I was training with the senior team every day. So it just felt odd that I would then go off and do a different competition than what they were doing.
Yeah.
That was the thing. It was like, I went to the World Championships in the single. I hardly actually knew most of the under 23 team because I hadn't been with them all yet. And that was what I felt like an outsider going into that team. It was weird.
That's kind of different.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like, obviously, like the step up, like you said, between junior and under 23 is quite big. And then I guess, I don't know, Tom said that the Sinkovich brothers sort of eradicated the under 23 and seniors gold medal.
Both in the same year.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, that's it. I think maybe that probably did it for me. I was like, oh, well, if you can be good enough to do both. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I remember like my first season at Leander, I just walked back after like one of the training sessions, and then you were just coming probably for a crew dinner, coming back from your first or one of the first Sierra Nevadas when you started training with the senior team sometime in 2014. And I think you started training in that season still at the club, and then you got moved into the seniors in that season. And I thought, oh, that's so exciting. Like, obviously, like the training must be going well. You're going to the senior team. How was it? How was the training camp? And I just remember you saying, hard, really hard. It was really difficult, but I enjoyed it. It was like that sort of really made it real for me. Like it takes like so much effort. Like it takes really hard work, and like sometimes it's not all sunshine and rainbows, and it's like serious.
Those Sierra Nevada training camps with the senior team, they are really hard.
Yeah,
they are really, really hard. I'm glad I don't have to do that again. I have so much respect for people like John Collins who have probably done it. Like I've done it a lot of times because I already went up there, I don't know, 8 or 9 times. Man, some of those people have done it so many times, and they go back for more. And it's so tough. And I admire their dedication and stuff to do that, and just to go and go and go, because that couple of weeks up there it's
so
you wake up in pain. You actually wake up feeling like I wouldn't say be beaten up, because being beaten up would probably feel better than how you feel after that. But it's like, and this is sort of on day 2 or 3. It was hard, man. You'd wake up and it felt like you hadn't slept at all. You got to go again, get on that erg, 20k. You're really thirsty. You're really hot. You're sweating. Like, obviously, the altitude is actually the least of your worries. Like, you're just screwed, man. And you just got to stick it out for 2 weeks, and knowing that it will make you get better. That was the thing. It was like
for a purpose. Yeah,
and it was enjoyable because you're with a great team doing it. But the training wasn't enjoyable, not for me at least. It was just incredibly hard. 20k ergos, so what's that, an hour and a quarter or so on the erg. Yeah. After about 5 minutes, was thinking, this is it was like hanging on for every session rather than thinking I'm thriving here. I never felt like I was thriving up there.
And there's no enjoyment because of the altitude. You can't ever hit your good score. So like sometimes on the ergo, if you feel good, there's a good score, you get motivated on a good score. Every score is bad. Every score is below what you want. Yeah, I hate them as well. You lose track of days, what time it is, what meal it is. It's just like...
Is there music? You can't even like watch films, so you probably also like just get bored of just being on the ergo with like nothing to do for an hour.
And there's some other little things that come with it, because there's quite dry air up there. Your sweat will evaporate. Then you'll kind of have salt there, and you'll get chafing on the erg. Just so many repetitions of that same thing.
It's hard to sleep.
But it is where huge gains are made. Like we came back, okay, very tired, but we'd lift some really heavy weights up there. We'd come back after a few weeks, we'd be pretty strong, and it was like real sort of old-fashioned hard work. And to be honest, that's what they do all year. Those guys who are training right now for Paris, they are working so hard. And like, it's a bit sidetrack here, but I found it we finished with a silver medal in Tokyo, and we were delighted, and everyone was very happy with us, and all the sort of British rowing community was sending such lovely messages. The press were really nice about us because it was our first ever first ever Olympic medal in the men's squad.
Oh, nice.
But then people were really quite tough on the rest of the team because they didn't quite win medals, and had a lot of close, like, it was so close to being an awesome Olympics. Like, had the four just been on the right side of it,
I think it was fourth place.
The lightweight women's double just been just a teeny bit closer. You know, all these fourth places, had they just been medals, we'd have come back saying, wow, what an amazing Olympics. And it was so close. And every one of those athletes worked so hard. They worked so hard. They absolutely, you know, they couldn't have given more. And I found it quite tough seeing some of the commentary about my teammates, because it didn't give the whole story of how hard they worked, and actually how, I think, I'm not completely, I can't completely say this with authority, but I think the sport's tighter than it used to be. If you looked at those races, the finishes, there were so many more blanket finishes than it used to be. Like, if you look 20 years ago, okay, a lot of the times, sort of third and fourth, fifth and sixth were kind of far away from getting medals, right? They were miles away. Whereas some of these finals in Tokyo, like the lightweight women, 4 of them were completely in a line for the gold medal.
Damn.
Like, it's savage.
Yeah.
And I don't think we can expect to have one team cleaning up in the same way that teams used to.
Yeah.
Because it's so tight.
Yeah, it becomes so professional. You train so hard. I mean, I always said, like, if you take those 7 fourth places and you actually put like a table based with points, like in Formula One, based on like the finishing positions, GB probably would have done better than like most of the countries with the medal tables.
Yeah.
Because there was just so many teams so close.
Well, yeah. And unfortunately, well, actually, no, not unfortunately. That's just not that's not even what the athletes want, right? We want to win medals, and I hope so much that they'll get what they want next year. I've bought tickets to be there for every finals day and shout for them.
Nice.
Looking forward to hopefully seeing lots of smiling faces, seeing some newspapers and the British rowing community and everyone saying lovely stuff about our awesome team, because they've been great since then. You know, they have, but I think the most important thing is that everyone, when they look at this, and if they're disappointed by watching the team's result, or if they're delighted, understanding that every single one of them has worked so hard to be there, and they've tried their hardest. And okay, maybe their hardest wasn't good enough on that day, but they would never have sort of left any stones unturned in their pursuit of gold.
That's it. The amount of sacrifices and everything that you do, like your personal relationships, the parties, the fun, the trips, like anything that you want to do, you have to just give up for years just to get a shot. And then, like, obviously you get really close, and then the press just doesn't show the whole story. We're just saying 4th place, unlucky.
Yeah. And I think no, it's tight. It's fine margins. Like, we were delighted. We came away with a silver medal, right? If we'd gone half a second, I think it was 0.52 of a second slower, we'd have come 4th.
That's nothing over 2,000 meters.
Yeah, it's nothing at all. And you know, if the women's lightweights had gone that same amount quicker, they'd have won. It's kind of, there's a line, and it's very tough because we all worked just as hard as each other, but there's a line that was the difference between me going, oh well, I'm going to quit, absolutely delighted, this is perfect, I've got a fairy tale ending for me, or Emily and Imogen probably absolutely heartbroken, questioning, you know, we're 100th of a second off bronze, probably questioning every stroke of that race. Could we have done things better? Did we clip a bit of water? Did I eat something wrong? Should I have gone for a bigger pee before the race? You know, it's that tight. But we all worked just as hard as each other. We all did very similar training and lived it.
Probably similar on the speed orders as well.
Yeah. And so I'm hoping, I'm really excited about the British rowing team for the next couple of years. I really, really hope that, you know, they get what they want from it, because they work. They're not working any harder than they did before. Maybe the training is different. I don't know, but you can't work harder than 100%, and they will be giving 100%, and I'm sure they always have been.
Yeah. I think that maybe there's a sense a little bit of like, oh no, it's over, you know, with Tokyo, like, you know, the medal rush is over, whatever. Yeah. But I think for me, like, having seen those 7 4th places, like I said, knowing people in the team, knowing how hard they work, actually I was like, nah, like that's gonna like light some fires.
Yeah.
Like I remember I was at Caversham fixing Erks, like literally I think a week after Tokyo or 2 weeks after, and Emily Craig was there training.
Yeah,
she'd like come home and gone training, and I went and said, I was like, Morris, like she was in like Tokyo 7 days ago, and Morris was like, yeah, but she's basically said, if she has all this time off, she'll tighten up, she'll struggle with like flexibility and things like that, so she's out on the water training. I was like, okay, here we go.
I think one thing was very tough for the team going into Tokyo. Like we didn't win a single gold medal at the World Championships between Rio and Tokyo in the Olympic class events. And but there was so much going on. There was out of the rowers' control. Like after 1 year, after Sarasota, David Tanner left, who was our performance director, which was a huge part of the team. And then 1 year later, so he was replaced by Brendan, who I thought was great actually. But then after David had left, sort of it was maybe a year later, Paul Thompson left, and he was the head coach of the women's team. They didn't replace him. No. And instead of replacing him, they doubled Jürgen Grobler's workload, and he was then in charge of the men's and women's team. Like, okay, it's a big enough job for someone to be in charge of one of those teams. And like Jürgen's a fantastic coach. He's really experienced, been around for years, but like you can only do so much. And if you want to be as detailed as Jürgen would like to be, with all of a sudden twice as many people, maybe in events that he might have known a little bit less about because he's not been coaching women for years and years, I think it was a disservice to the athletes to not hire a chief women's coach again.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think personally, I feel that the sort of tumultuous time with David leaving, Brendan coming, Tomo leaving, Jürgen taking over, and then Jürgen leaving. It was like there was some stuff like, Jürgen leaving is the reason the team didn't do so well. Maybe it's part of it, but it's all of those things coming together meant that there was no consistency for the athletes, right?
Well, absolutely.
It was tough, I think, for us just to stay in our lane, do our thing when you didn't even know, like the sort of management was changing so much. And hopefully for this few years now, they've got Paul in charge, and it seems like they've got quite a settled group of people. They can just focus on their thing, do it, stick to one strategy for the whole time. Probably make quite a big difference. And if you imagine in your jobs, or if you had a different boss every few weeks and they wanted a slightly different direction, or if you, in your own clubs, if your coaches were changing and you kind of they changed what boats they wanted to do in or what their strategies were, it's like very hard for you to feel safe in your spot in the team, but also very hard to know, like it's very hard for your body to deal with slight changes in the training.
Absolutely. I mean, like when you have a winning system here that's been producing so many gold medals over like however many Olympiads, and then suddenly in one Olympic cycle you change 4-5 different variables who are like that are crucial to the performance, to like the outcomes and everything. Like if you, in engineering, for example, if you test a system, you make one change at a time and you actually like leave it for some time to see like what's the effect. Like if you're testing and change like 4 or 5 different variables, like you don't actually know what's made the change or like what's causing that what outcome. So it's a little bit like interesting. Like obviously I'd like to think that, I think that if obviously the men's team was left without a coach, they would have definitely replaced the chief men's coach. Why didn't they do the same thing for the women? That seems a little bit strange, obviously.
I definitely think we spoke before about the real skill of a fantastic team is like what Leander did really well in GB while I was there is to take everything away from the athlete. People used to sort of say, rowing's really hard, you guys do such a good job. My dad sort of used to jokingly say like, no, it's not. You've got someone that does everything for you. Yeah. You've got a physio, you've got someone that cooks your food, you've got someone that, we used to turn up the airport and not know where we're going. Well, you go to the desk and be like, where are you flying to? I'm like, I'm going to a viz. Like, I just know the name of the camp. Like, GB told me to be here. Like everything gets done for you so that you can focus on just the things you need to do and get the best performance out of you. So if more gets put on your plate, you're having to think about other stuff. Obviously, like that's the struggle. Yeah,
well, I'd say it was a more stressful. Like if I compare the run into Rio to the run into Tokyo in terms of just the vibe around the place. It was way more stressful. It's like into Rio, okay, I wasn't going to be in one of the boats, but I knew my place, and there wasn't constant chopping and changing. In the few years into Tokyo, all the boats were different every year, and it was like the squad staff, I think, well, not the athletes, of course it's not the athletes, they don't choose this, but whoever is in charge of that, and I think it's head coach, right, could never decide who they wanted in what boats. So it felt like we were doing, as an athlete, it felt like we were constantly being tested. Literally every other week, it was like some sort of doubles or pairs matrix or ergo test or seat race or trial or singles race or something. And it was like, but they could never decide on what they wanted. And then, so it felt like we were just sort of, all of us were constantly pitted against each other. I don't think the atmosphere was super nice compared to the time before, which is such a shame because it was great. It was great people. And until the COVID happened. And then after that, for the most part, the boats were quite settled and we could just focus on making ourselves as fast as we could. But I think by then a lot of the sort of damage was done in that. But yeah.
And I think, I don't know about you, but for me, seat racing, there's nothing more stressful than there's nothing. Like, obviously, like a World Championships is hard, but like you're in the team and you're trying to go and get a result. Whereas like when you're seat racing, you're like, I could not, I can be out. I could not get anything this year. I could not go anywhere. Like, and like you said, you're like, your best friend turns into your enemy, and that is a very high stress environment.
I felt like every time I got swapped in a seat race, I felt like they wanted me to lose.
Yeah.
It really felt like that. And I'd come back swinging. Some of my best ever performances, I think, were in those seat races where it was like, why have they swapped me again today? Why have they swapped me when I've just won one? And it's like, they want me to lose. If that's how it feels, it's like they really want me to lose. Well, I'm not going to lose. And
that's the best attitude to have.
Oh, man, some of those days.
With seat racing, because in order to keep it fair, they can't tell you what's going on. So you never really know what's going on. So your brain just starts playing tricks on you and filling these gaps in and be like, well, they're seat racing me against him, and then that means they're not. And like they obviously want this, and then it really messes with you.
I'll tell you what, there was a time like during the sort of winter of 2019 and start of 2020, just before the pandemic, I wasn't having a good time of training. I wasn't performing as well as I wanted. I think if there was time for me to be able to put up my hand and say I'm not feeling all right, I'm sure there'd have been some sort of energy deficiency or something going on, because I was screwed. I didn't even get the ergo cut off at the Boston trials. I was really not performing. But the Olympics was around the corner. I didn't have time to say I'm not okay, right? You just had to crack on. But it was because I didn't perform that well in that first trial. I felt like I was on the back foot, and it felt like they were just looking for a reason to kick me out. So I wasn't doing good ergo scores. I didn't perform that well in the single in that first trial. I still beat everyone outside of the squad. So I don't know why I was treated by like such a leper, but like it felt like every seat race was like Jack again. Came third in the final Olympic trials, which was like, okay, surely that's enough to be like, I'm in a boat. No, seat racing again. And I remember thinking at one point, this is just too much. It's too much. I actually want to lose, because if I lose, it's done. And it felt like that would be, I just wanted some certainty, right? And fortunately, I didn't lose, right? And actually did all right. But man, it's when you care about it so much and you give your whole life to it, it's the only thing in your life. You can't afford for it to go wrong, right? It's not just a little up, and it's not just a seat race that you can then go home and be like, oh well, it's just rowing, it's just part of my life. It's your whole life. It really is. And while I was studying, at least I had university in some way to kind of be like, well, at least I've got this. But once that was done, you need it to go well. So I was fortunate things did end up my way, but it's tough. And for people that don't quite get what they want, I've got countless teammates who were doing very well, maybe won medals at the World Championships, didn't quite make the Olympic teams, and in another year maybe they would have. And it's so difficult when they've put everything into that basket and tried their best. And now I know that we're all privileged to be athletes anyway, right? And I'm sure people will be giving their right arm to do it in other professions or doing other things. I was facing a bit of a bad light because actually, like I said at the beginning, if I could be 20 and do it all over again, I would do every single one of those days all over again, right? I would. But I think it's just back onto what I was saying about when you're watching the British team or watching these people compete or any crews, just remembering how much they've given. And if they don't get the result they want, support them. That's it. It's like cheer for them whether they're finishing first or finishing 16th. Like, let's back our team.
That's it. They've given the same effort. It takes the same effort. You just don't, like, if you do everything right in the process, the outcome's not dependent on you. The system changes. You don't know, like, which semi-final you're going to get drawn in against, or like what's going to happen at the World Championships, maybe one lane faster or the other. Like, but if you nail the process and then people treat you differently depending on the outcome, that's not necessarily down to you. I think you nailed it. Like, definitely support. And the last thing the athletes need after like giving up so much for, just torturing themselves in training for months and months is to then come away with a bad result by like 1/100th of a second and just get shut on by the media. Like, that's just not the way to build a long sustaining team. Yeah. So I want to definitely like hear about the Rio Olympics. Like, what was it like? Obviously you walk up in a hospital after the 8 crashed into your back. Yeah. What was like your first thought?
Okay. So when the boat hit us, we flipped over.
It was you.
It was me and Angus Groom in a double. And my first thought, because you can process lots of thoughts in a second, right? I felt something hit the boat first, and I thought, oh, fuck's sake, Angus has hit a buoy again. Angus, if you're watching this, I'm sorry, but you weren't that good in multitasking, so you could row really well, but you wouldn't then steer at the same time, whatever. But you were a great rower and great friend, so you are a great friend. So
shout out Angus. Yeah,
shout out to Angus, but work on the steering a bit. But it wasn't Angus's fault, by the way, this accident. Angus was completely in the right. Anyway, so I'm not blaming you.
So he's just getting battered for no reason.
But anyway, so I was like, oh, Angus has hit a buoy again. And then the next thing was just like crunch and a big thud in my back, like right in my lower back. And then we didn't know what it was, but our boat just started tipping and we were sort of trying to right it, and we just flipped over. But what happened was the 8 had gone straight into my back. It brushed Angus's leg as well, actually, and went straight into my back. But the boat had gone, we had those wing riggers, like the front aluminium wing riggers. The boat had gone under the backstay, but over the rigger. So it was like locked in with our boat. And so that was what the weight was that tipped us over. And I felt the most immense pain, like in my obviously in my back, felt like an 8 had just hit it. And also my hip was burning. Couldn't really understand. But I thought I was going to drown. I was in the lake in Portugal, and I can't really remember, but somebody helped me out of the water. I think it might have been Matt Gottfried.
I think it was Gottfried.
And I was wearing a white, like a World Rowing Championship all-in-one. And someone said, there's a lot of blood, which really calmed me down, as you can imagine. I got taken into a boat, into Jürgen's coaching boat, and he sped us back about 3 kilometers back to the landing stage, where I was put on the floor and sort of lay there. But so to start with, I thought, right, I'm going to drown. Next thing was like, well, I don't know what's going on, and was just laying there on the floor and told to stay still. My hip was hurting very much. I knew I was bleeding a lot. Back was in bits. Eventually got taken into an ambulance and driven to hospital. And
was this in a viz?
In a viz, yeah.
So it was quite a remote.
Yeah, so there was a hospital about 25 minutes away, but it was quite a small one, kind of like a minor injuries unit almost.
Yeah.
And it was full on like blue lights flashing and sirens, and eventually did this CT scan. But everything's in Portuguese, right? I don't speak Portuguese. And they said you've broken a load of bones in your spine. So this was pretty much bang on 1 year before the Rio Olympics. And in my mind, it was straight away like, right, well, there's no chance. That's it, done. Also, don't really know what this means in terms of normal life. Like, what they just said, I've broken a load of bones in my spine. In my mind, breaking bones in your spine is kind of life-changing, right? Fortunately, it turns out it wasn't too life-changing. But I then got driven to another hospital in Lisbon, that was about 2 hours to drive, and again, not allowed to move. So that was a pretty uncomfortable journey in an ambulance, where I spent a further week. during that, I had like MRI scans and more scans on it, and spoke to a surgeon that spoke a bit better English, and he said that I will make a recovery. I'll be able to row again. It's going to take a long time. And I said, how long? He said he can't really say. So it was pretty difficult because every day I was sort of waking up in hospital on my own in a different country, really unaware of what was next. And eventually I flew home in an air ambulance and saw a surgeon in England, and it was very nice to see someone that sort of
speaks your language.
Well, spoke my language, but also it was close to home. Everything was a bit more familiar. My family could come and visit, and I started to feel a bit more confident about the whole thing. He felt a bit more sort of bullish as well, and was like, you know what, you will be able to get back to normal training. It's just going to be a very slow and steady sort of progression. And it was slow. It was like started off with just standing up for a bit, and then walking to the end of a room or walking to the end of a corridor, and then eventually up some stairs, and
baby steps.
Yeah, really baby steps. And but after a couple of months, I started training at the British Olympic Rehabilitation Centre in Bisham Abbey. Was starting off just on an exercise bike with no resistance, and by the end of the week was aqua jogging and doing some resistance, and after a couple of weeks was allowed to sit on the erg and like with a like a bin bag over the fan and do some patterning. And after about 4 months was training properly on the erg. Went to Sierra Nevada. In fact, there was a funny thing. So I went to Sierra Nevada and I thought I was going to do a very different training program because I'd had a broken back a few months ago. Jürgen was like, okay, we're going to really adapt the training. The only adaptation I had compared to everyone else was that one 18k ergo, I did 16k, and he said that I can do 10 minutes on the bike at the end of it. But that meant I actually trained for longer than if I'd done the 16k, because it doesn't take me 10 minutes to do, well, it probably does now. It doesn't take me 10 minutes to do that 2k. So I was a bit annoyed at that. But then I came back from that camp and did a 2k ergo. I think I did about 6:04, so 5 seconds or so off my best at the time, and then got back in the boat. So yeah, 4.5 months it was from smashing the back to getting in the single again.
Only the resilience of an athlete, really. Like,
that's insane. Like, probably many people would have thought, like, am I going to be able to walk again? Or, okay, rowing's done, I need to like protect the rest of my life. Like, it's an insane journey, and especially like knowing what had followed after.
Well, and that's the thing. And one thing I thought about during all this was like, I don't like the priorities changed a bit, right? So, okay, I wanted to go to the Olympics still, of course, but most important was like, I want my body to be functional. And I don't know, I'm not a doctor. I'm not an expert on spines. And I thought to myself, if I'm going to get my body functional just to live normal life for the rest of my life, I need to aim for the Olympics anyway, because that way I'll do all the sort of bits that your physio tells you to do that you kind of do half of, there's like things with elastic bands and all that kind of stuff. I'll actually do it if I'm aiming for the very, very top. And then that way I'll be like in best health going forward. So that was sort of my motivation. And as I got back into it, I started to think, hang on a minute, maybe I could get there. Maybe I could still make the team. It was tough for that 4 months because I could see the rest of the team charging towards the Olympics, doing 3 sessions a day while I was like, like I said, walking around with elastic bands and stuff. But as that time went on, I started to think, you know what, maybe I can do it. And
just that little flame flicker.
Yeah.
And then it's like, it's on.
Well, it got to the stage where it looked like I'd be able to enter the trials in the last Olympic trials. And then I thought, well, if I'm going to be at the trials, then I can sure as hell come in the top 7. I didn't. I came 9.
Not bad, having had your back smashed.
Yeah.
By the fastest state in the world. Yeah.
I mean, so officially, what broke? Like, literally,
it was the transverse processes from T12 to L5, and so that's the bits on the side of your spine, and the tear in the psoas muscles.
Yeah.
So it's actually very fortunate. It's unlucky that didn't happen, but fortunate it was like slightly to my right hand side.
Yeah.
Because if it had been a bit more central, probably would have been a bit more of a disaster.
Well, again, like you're talking about, you can work as hard as you want, but you need a bit of luck.
Yeah.
whatever happens.
If we'd been a little bit faster in that session, it'd have actually been worse.
yeah.
So the psoas muscle for those are people, including me, to not.
That's a hip flexor.
Oh, okay, yeah. So you came back obviously like in full power after you pulled a 604 after like making the recovery. Came 7th at the final. No, came 9th at the final trials. So that leaves you with like a few months to go before the Olympics.
Yeah. So that was March time. And then I raced in the double at Henley with Nick Middleton. We had a great time. We won the double sculls, which was super cool.
Of course you did. You were there with Nick.
Yeah, Nick never lost at Henley, right? And I also I got a bit of a lucky break because Nick was John Collins and Johnny Walton were in the double together, and we were doing a team speed order just before the European Championships. But Johnny was at his sister's wedding, so Nick went in it, which meant that instead of rowing with Nick, I did the single, and I raced along against Alan Campbell in the single that day. And compared to how much he'd beaten me by in the trial, he beat me by only like a length and a half this time. So I'd shown quite a big progression. It was a really windy, horrible day, to be honest. I think I just had a better lane, but I kept that. And after that, Jürgen thought, well, I'll let Jack and Nick me and Nick raced in the World Cups in the double, but then he let me do one in the single. And I did so I raced in Poznan in the men's single, and I won the B final, I was gutted to not make the A final because I just missed out, but I won the B final. In fact, the person that I just beat was Sverre Nielsen, who's now very, very fast in the single. So I'll pretend I'd be up there with him if I had been there. But then those results worked quite a lot in my favour, I think, in Jürgen's mind. So then when we went to Lucerne for the World Cup, again, Nick and I raced in the double. We made the final, but then on the day of the final, Peter Lambert got sick, and I found out about an hour before that I'd go and race in the quad. And it was a little bit of a tough thing because Nick and I were a doubles partner. He's like one of my best mates, and he'd beaten me in the trial. But then Jürgen picked me to do the race in the quad. And we raced and won a silver medal. Then I had to go back up and race again, absolutely baggage, and came 6th with Nick. But I think that put me as likely the spare for the sculling for the Olympics. Now, the Olympics is very strict about how many numbers they can bring. If you qualify a whole team, you can bring 3 spares. I think it's 2 now. And for the British rowing, obviously they prioritise sweeps, so they brought a stroke sider and a bow sider, and then a lightweight, because back then you had lightweight 4s as well.
Yeah.
So they didn't bring a sculler. So I was selected as like a non-travelling reserve for the team. So I went to Silvretta, went to Varese, where we did our final camps, and I'd be training then for FISU, like World University Championships. So I went with the team to Silvretta, was actually in the boat quite a lot because, who was injured? I think Angus has had a bad back. So I was training quite a lot of that time in the boat. Loved Varese. I was training alongside Alan in singles, like taking chunks out of each other, and was even in the quad the day before they flew to Rio. So we did a speed order race at Caversham. Angus had a bad back. I was in it. And I really thought, come on, this is the day before you're flying. Surely I'm going. Like, this is ridiculous. But no, the next day they all flew off and I was at home.
Damn. Yeah, so obviously it was a big trip, like going to South America, like beautiful Olympics.
But from that leaving then, so obviously you think that's it?
Yeah, so they left. And it was really nice. They gave me a few presents and stuff and said, thanks very much for being our spare. And I remember driving home, I was driving out of there, and it must have been a bit dusty in my car or something, because there were a few tears. And I wasn't sad that I wasn't racing anymore. I knew that, but I wanted to be there because they were my team, right? We had a great team going into Rio, like really strong, cohesive bunch of people. And I just wanted to be there to support them because I'd been with them for every day of training. I wanted to be there to watch them sort of get what they deserve from their hard work. But no, they flew off, and then had one day, I think it was Henley Town and Visitors Regatta. I came down and watched Henley Town and Visitors Regatta, and they were all in Brazil. And the following morning, I woke up to a missed call from David Tanner, who, if you don't know, David Tanner was the performance director at the time, kind of like the real life Demon Headmaster. But David doesn't just call you for a chat, right?
Yeah.
If you got a call from David Tanner, there's a good reason for it. And I was thinking, why has he been calling me from Brazil? Anyway, he called again, and I missed it again. And eventually, we kept trying to call each other, but there was something, dodgy signal or something. And he called me again and answered, and I was actually on the toilet, which was funny. And it was like he called me as I flushed or something. Anyway, so that was funny. And but he called me actually with something quite serious, and it was that unfortunately Graham Thomas had come down sick, and David wanted me to know that I might be flying in a couple of days to Brazil to cover, just in case. So the plan would be that I'd fly out there, be in the hotel, and if they need me to row, I could then do that, but hopefully not. And of course, like, as the spare in the team, you do hope for these opportunities. You never hope for them at the expense of your mate, but you want your chance too. Like, if there was able to be, if we could have just like a five instead of a quad, that's what you wanted.
Yeah.
And because we all train really hard to race, and then an hour later, David called me again. He said, "Look, your flight's booked for tomorrow, be at Heathrow." I was like, "Wow!" And he said, "You can't tell anyone." And I said, "Well, what do I bring?" He said, "I don't really know, because you don't know how long you're coming for." He said, "Hopefully a few days, because again, the plan is that Graham will get better and I'll race." So I went to Heathrow the next day, got on the plane. It was very weird. I bumped in. The first two people I saw on the plane were Chris Froome and Andy Murray, and the plane was pretty much full of Olympic athletes off to go and compete. And but I wasn't, in my mind still. It was like I'm there just in case, and we'll see. And for the 10-hour journey flying from London to Rio, it was a lot of sort of mind games going on. Like, in one way, I was thinking, they wouldn't have brought me out so hastily and quickly unless they really, really needed me. But then I also had a few times that year thinking, they're going to put me in the boat, and then didn't. So I didn't want to get my hopes up and be disappointed. And then also, there's a big part of thinking, I hope Graham's all right. I hope he's better, because he's trained really hard and deserves it. He deserves to be in the boat and hopefully win a medal.
Yeah.
And I arrived and got a taxi to the team hotel, where I was greeted by like the head coaches, the doctor and nutritionist. It was quite late in the evening by then. They brought me some dinner and all sat on my table, which was weird, because these people were normally quite like a bit standoffish.
Yeah.
For them to be so friendly was a bit strange. And they basically, like, David sat down and said, "Look, Jack, I'm going to talk you through what's going to happen over the next few days. It's quite big news." And then I knew exactly what it was going to be, and my hand was shaking. And he said that unfortunately Graham's like caught a flu and won't be racing anymore, but we're going to have to withdraw him, and you'll be now racing in the quad. And I remember going up to my room in the hotel that night and feeling such mixed emotions, because in one way it was everything I wanted, right? I was there. I trained so hard to try and go to the Olympics, and this is my shot. And I felt like I deserved to be in with a shot anyway. But then also, it's not how you want it to happen. Absolutely not. It's far from it. And I wanted to be there on my merit, because I've done so well and I've been selected, and I should be in the team, right? I didn't want it because one of my best mates was sick and had just had his stream ripped from him. And I felt awful in my room knowing that in that same building, Graham was there.
Heartbroken.
Probably absolutely heartbroken, yeah. And I think we both probably had a sleepless night for different reasons. But it was really not a nice feeling. I called up my dad and woke him up, and I wasn't meant to be telling anyone, but I had to speak to someone. And he said, "Well, Jack, it's terrible for Graham. It really is terrible. But there are 3 other guys in that boat, and they need you now. So you need to stop like focusing on that and focus on making that boat go really fast." So it was, but it was, yeah.
That's actually really solid advice that you got.
No, yeah, he knows it. He's around in the sport too, right?
Exactly.
But yeah, man, it was tough, and I still feel so much for Graham for that, because that's just like, it's every athlete's worst nightmare, right?
Yeah, we all did when we heard it. Just gutting, wasn't it?
Well, it was definitely gutting, but like, if there was anyone that was going to be selected, like, I was just so glad that it was you. Like, obviously just rooting for you big time, and I think Graham didn't train out of Leander, so like I didn't have that kind of relationship with like some of the guys who were like in the sculling squad at that point. But like obviously like having seen you like come through from under 23s to the senior team and just fighting and like literally knowing what happened like a year before with the boat and you're back, like I personally couldn't be happier to like know that like you got that shot, because I'm fully convinced that had that accident not happened, you would have had that spot but like on your terms. So maybe it's just sort of like a way that the universe balanced out like the misfortunes that happened.
It was mental. I remember the first day I went into like, actually, because the guys hadn't seen me, so I arrived late at 9, and then I went and met the other 3 guys from the course, like at the course. So I went with David Tanner, went and got my accreditation and went into the venue. And I remember bumping into Angus, Pete and Sam, who were the other 3 guys, and they just looked at me and started laughing. It was like, finally, I think it was like a real relief for them that I'd arrived, because they'd been rowing around with one of the sweep rowers called Noddy, and I think Noddy had got a bit above his station and started trying to coach them from inside the boat. It's like, mate, you're a sweeper, you don't know what this should feel like. And so I think they were quite relieved, because we only really, I think I arrived on Tuesday, and we raced on Saturday for the heat. So it's like, we need to kind of crack on here, right? Get this boat shifting. We were delighted. We made the final, and we went through the repechage to do it. But when we actually had a great race in that repechage, and I remember during the race we were making calls about the guys who earlier in the year were in the quad who didn't make it. So Charles Cousins was meant to be in it earlier in the year, and his back really deteriorated, so he couldn't. And then Graham obviously had that in the few days leading up to it, and kind of we wanted to do it for them as best we could. And we had a great row, made the final, and we're like, you know what? We were only at, I don't know, 2/3 of a length off Germany in the repechage, who were the Olympic champions, world champions, and went on to actually win the event. We turned up to the final thinking we can do this, right? We can absolutely do this. Turns out we couldn't, but we gave it a good crack.
We spoke about it many times. You pull harder for your mates, and it's like, as a coach, it's something I tried to foster, and like as an athlete, it's one of those, a little TikTok of me saying it's done quite well. Like, when it comes down to it, you feel like you have to keep pulling when you know your mate's pulling for you, and like that's when you lead to like your best performances, and when and like for you guys to have 6 guys in that boat, instead of 4, it's like
exactly, that's what it must have felt like in that repechage. There were like six pairs of blades going in and just powering the boat through.
It actually did. It really did. It was a quite special middle 1,000 meters of that race, and that's what we were thinking about.
Awesome. So coming back from Rio, obviously, like then you must have, I imagine, wanted to take some break, like from training, like to just rest and like prepare for the next season. But like also, I know what it's like immediately your eyes will probably have been set on Tokyo, and obviously knowing that you've done what, like obviously made the A final, like with the quad on like the last minute notice, like with the team like changing so much during the year. Like you said, there were like 6-8 guys up for contention with obviously the double. You must have like probably definitely like felt really confident about like what was to come as well.
Yeah, well, actually, the first couple of months, I wasn't sure if I wanted to go back, because the year from break my back to go to that was just, there was just so much happened. I was kind of like, you know what, I don't want to have such a up and down life. I just want to live a simple life, and not a simple life, but like one that's a bit more steady and predictable.
Yeah.
But then after a couple of months, I was like, yeah, you know what, I 100% want to go back. I know we're good enough to win a medal in this squad, and I don't want to be a spare anymore. I really want to go back and be in the team on my terms. And had a pretty good, like, got back to training. I think I won the December trials, was feeling pretty good, and our quad that summer was great. It was really fun. We got on like a house on fire, the 4 of us. We won Henley, got a record time, which still hasn't been beaten, so we'll hopefully keep that on for a little bit longer.
Nice.
And ended up with a silver medal at the World Championships. So like, okay, that's a great start to the Olympiad, and felt like that if we can build on that, we'll be in the medals, no problem. Frustratingly, I just was unbelievably frustrated the next couple of years, because it felt like every time a boat did well in our sculling team, they ripped it up and tried to start again. And I was just like so confused by it, because 2017, we won a silver medal, but quad never rowed together again. It was like, oh, we'll just, and And we won a silver medal and a bronze medal that year with Tom Barris in the single. And it felt like maybe they thought, if we put those together, we'll win a gold medal. But why mess with something that's not broken, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, the following year we had a quad that I think won the B final. Angus and I raced in the double, and we had a pretty bad final, and we finished in 4th place. I was like, well, let's just stick with something. And then the following year, again, the boats were completely different. It was like, why are we doing this? Why are we not just building on something and having a bit of predictability? So although the Olympiad started so well, and we still won medals throughout each season, but we didn't, at the one that mattered, it wasn't there. But it was like for me, like I spoke already about that 2019 winter, I was really struggling and kind of just out of sorts. For me, the pandemic was the biggest blessing that could have happened. I was done with it. I was like actually so fed up with rowing and not enjoying it. I felt like the training program was all wrong. I felt like the intensity of the training program was no longer, we weren't doing what the program said. We were just doing everything as hard as we could. And it was because we were all pitted against each other all the time. It was so competitive. It was like a constant trial. The sessions that are called UT2 were never that. Everything was just, I don't think I did a single UT2 session that season. I really don't think I did, unless I was sick. And but I had to, because if I was going slower, the coach is like, oh, well, that's not a very good performance. But it's like, this is a training measure, not a performance measure. But everything was a performance measure, and that was a big problem, I think. And I think that's why I was performing so badly. But the pandemic meant that we all had to turn off. We all had to go home. We didn't have coaches over our shoulders. We could do things a bit our way. And for me, I studied a bit. I read a lot about different sports and how they train, and different energy systems and training zones, and pretty basic stuff really, but stuff that we'd just chucked away in our pursuit of beating each other and being competitive. And training at home meant, okay, it was initially hard because the Olympics was cancelled and we didn't know if it would happen. But once they'd confirmed it, I was like, well, I had COVID at home, and then that gave me a license to kind of slowly get back into training, because we didn't really know the long-term effect of COVID, and no one even knew about long COVID yet, but we were worried about scarring in lungs and stuff. So I slowly got back into training, but then I kind of just thought, well, I'm going to be so strict on a couple of things. So my heart rate on the long sessions, I'm not going to let it go above a certain rate, whatever it means my split is. And it meant I was rowing slower than when I was a junior, but that's fine. The duration of training is what matters, I think, more. Actually. Yeah. If you can go a bit slower for a longer time, you're probably going to get, I think, a better outcome, and you'll be able to do it repeatedly.
Your heart doesn't know how hard you're pulling, what the split.
Your cells have no idea what split you're pulling. It's ridiculous to think they do. It's ridiculous that every day you think you should be pulling exactly the same or progressing. Like you just need to
listen to your body.
Yeah, and if you have nice markers like heart rate, use it, right? But that's not what we've been doing. And I think as maybe a smaller guy in the team, I especially probably overstretched myself trying to keep up. But I didn't do that. I refused to. And I started to fall back in love with the sport, because I was like, you know what? Training is so much more pleasant when not every single day feels like a test. And it meant on the days where I needed to test myself, I could. So I came back into, when we eventually were back in Caversham that September, I was really excited to be there. I was like, this is fun. I feel in good shape. I feel like when I want to perform, I can. I was like in a better body composition as well. Like I think when we were over pulling on the ergs and stuff, we were all a bit fatter, because we don't use the energy systems in the right way. A proper UT2 session's meant to be using fat as a fuel. UT1, the moment you're out of that, you're using carbs as a fuel. Then you're not burning your body fat. I think we had it. That's why I think when you look at rowers with a little bit of a rig, like a little bit of a dodgy rig, like most of us had, I certainly have now. I think a lot of that was because we were pulling too hard on our sessions. Now, I'm not a sports scientist, but I read a lot, so this is my theories. But I didn't miss a single day of training that year up until the Tokyo Olympics. I missed half of one weight session, and that's it. So by the end of the year, I had the highest training mileage of anyone in the squad, which was way different to previous years. Mm-hmm. And I knew that I was in the form of my life. So that having that pandemic actually for me was in terms of my rowing, was a real blessing. I didn't feel like anymore like I was hoping to get a seat. So I was sure I was going to get a seat, and it was like, which seat in the boat would it be, rather than am I going to be in it?
Yeah.
And honestly, it felt great to get selected for the Olympics in my own right, rather than as a reserve. Like, to actually be like, it wasn't even a will I get selected anymore. It was just kind of a formality, and it felt so nice after the previous time to actually, it was based on my performances.
Absolutely, that confidence that it's not about what I'm going to get a seat, or like it's which seat am I going to get. That definitely fuels your performance big time, because like belief plays such a huge part in like what you can actually get out of yourself.
It's an amazing feeling. And then to hear you benefiting so much more. We talked about before, consistency over intensity, and consistency is just so important. It's so important, especially in a para-endurance sport. Like, it's day after day after day, getting a score on the board, not going mad, having a week off because you're ill, going mad again.
If I was a coach, I wouldn't even be recording the like training zone results, or if I was, I'd be recording it in a way where all the other athletes can't see each other or something, because I think it held us back big time.
Yeah,
I really think it did. I think it was stupid.
I had a similar experience with my time in the senior team, and like for me again, like sort of coming on the bottom, we came in after 2012, so I came in with a group of quite a big fresh group, so competing a lot, and like every session was a competition, and even there were times when we were told to back up. Oh, don't worry, it's just a chill 12k or whatever. And then I remember one particular where we were told like, it's just a UT2 session. And like Ollie Cook finished early and put his score on the board, and like Jürgen came down and just like looks at the board and like loudly in front of everyone was like, "Oh, Ollie, what's such a good score, 149."
So then you'll want to do that.
Yeah, just to like make everyone realise that although someone said this is a chill one, actually we're still racing.
Yeah.
And like for me, like, and that training intelligence, it was actually Rob Dauncey sort of had a word with me and was like, "Tom, like, you need to look at the training week and like identify a couple of sessions that you want to show them."
Exactly.
Obviously, some of them are really easy. Half hour on Wednesday, pieces on a Saturday. So you can't be trying to beat everyone in every single session.
Well,
and it sounds really like obvious now, but when you feel like you're like slipping off maybe the bottom of your dream, and you're sitting there and you're
like, no, every session race.
And also you have to feel like you have to you have to look like you're trying really hard. Otherwise they're like, "Oh, he's lazy." But when I read about all this stuff, it was like, actually, if you train a little bit too hard in those longer, lower intensity sessions, you're not even getting the benefit from the session. It's benefiting you more to try less hard. That's the thing that's like makes me a bit sad, that I spent 7 years doing it the wrong way, and no wonder my 2K ergo score hardly improved while I was at Caversham. No wonder my 30-minute score was better when I was training here, because here I was encouraged to polarize it really, really well. There was kind of encouraged not to. They didn't tell me not to, but it was encouraged to keep on pushing.
Yeah, you can read.
Yeah,
you can read the vibe of the room. Yeah,
and if you were one of the weaker guys and you were backing off, you'd be out the door.
I feel like the system, it's sort of controversial to say, like, potentially I'm the guy who sort of didn't quite make it, and so what does his opinion matter? But I feel like the system works incredibly well for like hard-wearing athletes.
Yeah,
like it's a really tough program. And if you're a hard-wearing athlete and you can manage that training load, you will go to Olympics and you will compete for a medal. And ultimately, like, that's what we all wanted. So that's the program we wanted. But again, same for me, like having spent 2 years in the senior team, came back, finished my career at Leander, again, like then getting like a 2K PB, like outside of the team, and being like, why is this? Like, for me personally, like being able to like change things a little bit. Obviously, I struggled a lot with my back in my career, so being able to like manage that, look after it and stuff, like it was interesting. And like part of that, and I did quite a big erg score, and people heard, like, we went out to Essen and Pete Shep was like, "Oh, Tom, I've seen, a good score, whatever, and like some people kind of like perked up again, and I was like, "Oh, am I going to have another go?" I was like, for me, like, I think I'd put my body in the ground already. So I'd found my point. I'm happy I went for it. But yeah, like again, like this, like talking about this stuff, I think it's really interesting. And like, if, like you said, if 7 years ago you could have listened to this podcast with 3 other guys talking about
faster.
Yeah, like hopefully maybe there's people out there who can listen to your advice.
Yeah, I'm sure I'd have been so much faster, and all the literature points towards it. It just seems counterintuitive, because in your head you think if I always push, like, ask for more of myself, are we better? But maybe you need to flip it and be like, I'm asking more of myself in a different way. Sometimes maybe you're asking more of yourself by resisting the temptation to go for more, you know? And it was more about discipline. And in my last year, I was so much more disciplined with everything. I was so much more disciplined with like sort of fueling and recovery and stuff during sessions. Like I spent a lot more money on supplements and stuff. Like, of course, making sure it's the right SIS ones that we knew were informed sport and batch tested and blah, blah, blah. But I was not going to leave anything to chance in that last year, because I knew, even like a year before the Tokyo Olympics, I knew that was going to be my last race. I didn't plan to continue after that. And so I wanted to make sure as how we got it right. And thankfully we did.
Awesome. So how was that, like, going into that Olympics? Like, because obviously it was still very, very much COVID infested, like in terms of you didn't have like a proper Olympic village, or I've been told.
Yeah.
I haven't been there.
We were still in the Olympic village though, right? It was still a full Olympic village, and it was still really fun. Just everyone had to wear masks indoors and outdoors, and there was lots of COVID protocol. The thing was, we just had this massive fear of having a positive test, especially when the tests weren't 100% accurate, right? It was like 96 or something. So false positives could be a thing. But we were being tested all the time. So going into the Olympics was like, it was just another thing you added into your routine, like, right, COVID test, and just staying away from people as best you could. But going into it, we were fast. Like we'd won a bronze medal at the last World Cup behind Netherlands and Italy. Okay, fair enough. They're very good crews. And we were like about to then go on altitude camp. We had a tough camp in Italy where I don't think the hotel served enough food, to be honest. Like, it sounds stupid, but like I was hungry a lot of the time and lost about 4 kilos in that camp. And by the end of the camp, we did some pieces, and we weren't that good, and we started overcomplicating things, and started pulling each other apart a bit and getting a bit annoyed at each other. So I remember the 4 of us, without our coach, had a chat, and we said, when we get up the mountain to Silveretta, we just need the 4 of us just to row, not trying to do any exercises, not make too many calls, just like the more sort of 2K legs that we can do without a word, the better. So we can just ingrain the strongest rhythm. And that's all we thought about that camp, was just, are we feeling each other in the boat? Are we moving together? But not talking about it, not thinking about where we're placing our blade or squaring or any of that. Just, are we getting that push together? Is the recovery together? And that was so simple. And it was the best camp, because, and sometimes Angus would try and make a few calls and everyone would be like, right. And then you get Harry or Tom or someone say, right, no more calls this leg. And it was like, because actually we were on something good and we just needed to ingrain it. A couple of 100K or maybe half 500K of rowing up a mountain, just really getting that same stroke in. That's what we needed. And we came back, got to Caversham, did a 2K piece down the track a couple of days after we got home, and did like 5:38 or something at Caversham. It was like, okay, that's pretty fast on a flattish day.
Pretty fast.
It's very quick, and it was flat, right? It was like, okay, that was in a time trial. We had a breath of a tailwind, and that was like a time trial where they'd said to us to just go flat pace. And then we did a full team speed order, like maybe the day before we flew to Tokyo. And again, this one was a completely flat day. And again, 5:38, it was like, okay, that is fast for a flat day at Caversham. We'll be very happy with that.
I don't know what you're talking about wanting to go in an 8. That is 8 times.
Well, exactly. And so we actually, I think we may have been the top percentage going into Tokyo from the squad, which I don't think many people would have known or expected, because we're Scullers, right, in the quad, and everyone's like, oh, the 8 and the 4 have been winning the World Cups. Like, okay, whatever. So we turned up thinking, we turned up in Tokyo thinking, we're on here, and then did the heat and we came third. Was pretty disappointing. Okay, Netherlands won and they were very good, but then Australia had beaten us, and we'd not raced Australia all year because of COVID. They didn't come to the World Cups. So this was like a bit of a spanner in the works. Didn't expect them to be good. And then through the other heat went Poland and Estonia, I think. No, not Estonia. Poland and Italy, of course. And which meant, okay, we've got to do the repechage again. So there's 6 crews, 2 spots only through to the final. Now, we'd all expected Tokyo to be this massive tailwind because of all the footage we'd seen before, but the repechage day was a pretty solid headwind. And that wasn't what we were expecting. And we weren't a massive crew. We were all about 90 kilos or under. And we were really hoping for a tailwind. We'd planned for a tailwind. We'd expected it. We knew it was going to be rough, but we were hoping a tailwind. And but I was so nervous for that repechage. I was honestly the most nervous I've ever been. There was a typhoon coming towards Tokyo at the time, and I was actually hoping it was going to hit so that we didn't have to race, because based on heat's results, we'd have made the final if they just, used those results. So I was actually hoping it would, like, in my mind, I was so afraid of how much I was going to have to bury myself in this race, or how much all four of us were going to have to bury ourselves. But we did, and we turned up, and we just took that race by the scruff of the neck, led it, won it. Felt like we didn't quite have to use every gear in the last bit, maybe 99% of it. But then the typhoon hit, which was perfect, because we'd done a heat, didn't quite get it right. We'd rectified it in the repechage, and then the typhoon meant we had an extra day off between the repechage and the final. So in our heads, our psychology was kind of like, we've actually had an extra chance to race. We've improved during this regatta. All those idiots that went straight through the heat, what have they done? They've just sat around for a couple of days, and now they have to sit around for an extra day. We're not even going to be tired anymore because we have a whole other day to recover. This is perfect. So we actually felt like going through the repechage was like our superpower. And we had an extra day's train. I remember we went out training and had like a big fat bungee on the boat on the typhoon day. Like we were doing we got overtaken by the German double, actually. We were rowing, the four of us, and in this headwind, it was so strong, and with a bungee too. But Tom Barris really wanted to do it, and so it was like, okay, we'll just let him have his way as long as he pulls hard off the start tomorrow. And so when we turned up on finals day, it was a totally different vibe. Like I was so nervous for the repechage. For the final, I was excited, just ready, and we turned up. It was a tailwind. Perfect, exactly what we'd been expecting for 4 years. And we knew what we wanted to do. We knew that we could be fast out of the blocks. In training, we were always fast out of the blocks. We just hadn't really shown it in racing for whatever reason. And as a crew, we agreed with our coach, like, whatever we do from stroke one, we are going to back each other. We're going to go out hard. We're going to really take the race by the scruff of the neck. We're going to try and lead it. And we'll do what it takes to lead it. And if we come sick, it's still sick in the Olympics. It's still really good. And if we really go for it, maybe we can do something really special here. I would never forget, like, we put the boat on the water, and we went off in pairs rowing, and maybe just doing legs only. And the first stroke, Tom Barris absolutely booted the hell out of that boat. I was like, hang on a minute, where's this guy been all the last few months? Like, it was like something he had not done at all. I was like, okay, this is different. And we did a couple of racing starts during the warm-up, and again, it was like I had this absolute beast behind me who, I don't know, for the previous few months, he was always strong, but this was a new level. And when we went off the start in that final, it was just like, right, stroke one, stroke two. After stroke two, I was like, this is a fast start. And you could feel that there was just nothing lost. It was just going. And it was crazy. Like, I've watched the race back and didn't appreciate how much was going on during the time. Different crews catching crabs and this and that. To be honest, on a rough day like that, if there was someone I'd have put money on catching a crab, it would have been Angus, and he didn't. So like, I could have like guaranteed you he'd have got a crab on a day like that at home. But maybe he's a game day performer. But it was just manic. Like, after a minute or two, kind of looked to the right and was like, okay, we're winning. Great. And then just after 500 meters, like, Italy caught a massive boat stopper just as they had taken the lead. And to be honest, I thought Italy were likely to win the race, and they screwed it up then. Right, that was another charge for us. I saw the stroke rate come up again. Like, our stroke rate was about 2 above what we normally raced at for that whole final. So normally about 36, didn't go below 38 in that race. Again, at halfway, look to the right, we're ahead. And 1500 meters, look to the right, pretty much level with the Netherlands. This is great because in the previous races, we had a better last 500 than them. So we can win. We can win this. I felt pretty good as well because I was focusing so much on just getting my blades out and like rowing well. Hadn't really thought about pushing hard for the last couple of minutes. So it was just like, let's just do a nice shape. And then maybe, but I suppose the other three were pulling me along. But as we got into the last 250 meters, you could feel it start to close up. And it's a horrible feeling in a rowing race when people are catching you up, because it's nice when you're pushing away and you can see them going into the distance. But it's the opposite when you can just see these boats catching you. It's rough, it's kind of frantic, there's bits of splash and this and that going on. And I remember the last sort of 10 strokes thinking, this is my last 10 strokes I'm going to do at British rowing. We're so close, we can win a medal here. And I remember just heaving on it, not really thinking about how I rowed, but just some real weight behind that spoon. And we crossed the line and just heard a beep, and then like beep, beep, beep. And it's like, I don't know, I think I can only speak for myself, but I think even though like I'm an optimist, I think deep down we all have this negativity. And initially it was like, we've screwed up. We've nailed this race almost perfectly and we've just finished fourth. And I was sure that was what happened until a moment later I heard a big roar from behind, looked up and saw a scoreboard and saw GBR next to number 2, and I went absolutely mental. I've watched this video of it. We went mental in that boat, apart from Tom Barris, who was actually for once exhausted because he tried from first stroke rather than halfway through the race. It was the most awesome feeling. Like, our team has been trying to do that for a long time, trying to win a medal in the quad at the Olympics. And you know, I remember watching them in London finish 5th. We finished 5th in Rio. 2008 they didn't qualify, but there's been like glimmers of a good quad coming along for years, and great athletes, like athletes stronger than me who didn't quite manage to do it. And it was the most amazing feeling when we realized that we'd actually done it and went and got our medals and all of that stuff. So I think in the interview, it was important for us to sort of shout out about the athletes from our team, and the ones who didn't make it for Tokyo, the ones who had been in the previous quads, we were sort of standing on the shoulders of, definitely.
Awesome. It's awesome to hear that it's that good. You want it to be, you know, you want it to feel like
what it feels like. Like, firstly, it felt like, I feel like it wouldn't have felt any better if we'd won, because to me, like, we were thinking silver would be like the best case scenario, right? But we were thinking we'd probably win a bronze if we nailed our race. So it felt like we'd won to be on any medal, and I'm sure it would have felt the same in third or second. But it feels like every single bit of like, there's nothing feeling wrong. Like, it's absolute elation. Like, normally there's some bit of discomfort in your life, like something's kind of bugging you. And right now it's like, I've been wearing these shoes a little bit long today, and they're just a little bit like, you know, you just kind of want to take them off. There was an absence of any of that. It was just a feeling of absolute, this is good.
Just complete.
Yeah, absolute happiness, right?
Amazing.
It was so cool. It was so cool.
Especially, like, this is awesome to hear that you nailed the start, like, when it mattered the most, like at the Olympic final, like right from the first moment, just the boat booted off, got up to high speed, and like probably the adrenaline from leading the race, like not dropping below like 38, which is like higher than what you normally would have rated. Like, I was watching that race live, and it was during the night, because obviously like Tokyo's like
2:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
Exactly. Like, I was just so happy just to like see you obviously win a medal, and the British team as well, because like it's been a tough Olympics to like definitely know that like someone stood the ground for the team as well, and it's not all been bad. Like, it's just been amazing. So you didn't actually like really probably get a chance to like probably enjoy the rest of the Olympics in the village?
No, not at all. We flew home the next morning. So we were watching the lightweight women's double and the women's pair from the airport lounge the following day, and then the men's 8 and Vicky in the single we were watching from home, which was super weird. Like, to be back in England watching that in the middle of the night, which we knew was the morning, like, was super weird. One thing that was very strange as well was we didn't know how everyone else had gone on that day, because we'd been focusing on our thing, and the race before us was the men's 4, which was we all found out later that they'd finished 4th, but we assumed that they'd have come second, because we just thought that's probably where they would come. Like, the Australians were really strong, and when we were warming up we could see them coming through in second place, and we came into the medals area, and they were there being interviewed at the time. So I assumed, well, if they're being interviewed now, they must have got a medal. But actually, so I went over to them, and I felt so bad about it afterwards, because I assumed that they got a medal. I kind of like bounded over to them all happy, and actually, they were being interviewed with very disappointed.
Gutters, yeah.
And I wish that wish I'd known and could have been more tactful than I was, because I don't think they really probably even noticed me that much. But I don't know. I just had it was a weird thing, that, because like when you're getting exactly what you want, and it turns out, well, I didn't realize, but it turns out they done completely the opposite. It was a tough thing, and they, really, really top athletes who, on another day, and that's the thing with it all. It's like on another day it would be different, but it's not another day. You can't do those races again.
And you're saying it's so close now, and it's so close, and actually, what it takes in the final, like what you did, what it takes is to risk something.
Yeah.
To rate a little bit higher than you ever did, to do that start that you've never, to actually like roll the dice and risk. And that means you might come out on top, but that also means you might not get it at all. And
that's it. And in the four, they took a risk too. They really tried to go for gold. Had they raced for silver, they'd have got silver, I'm sure.
Yeah. I mean, I came up with a couple of those boys. I messaged them after that, and I was, and it was like at the end of the day, I remember when Rick Edgerton told me after Beijing that they didn't really challenge for gold, and he was like, we didn't do what we came there to do. Like, we got a medal, but like he was gutted that they hadn't actually challenged. And then obviously in London, they ended up with the worst medal, but he was happier because they tried to go for it. So I sort of said to those boys at the end of the day, like, you don't go into Olympic final to not fucking try.
No.
And like, no matter what anyone else says when there was things, like, you went there and you went for it. And like, you can't do any more than that.
Yeah.
Win or lose.
Yeah. And for a lot of those athletes as well, they will get another chance to race. Like, obviously, a lot of them who you probably race in Tokyo with, they're going for Paris. For you, that was the end of your international rowing. So how did you find the transition afterwards? Or like, what was it like homecoming with a medal as well?
Well, it was awesome. Like, it was like the best thing. It was so cool to come home with this thing that, everyone was so excited about it. It was weird because, like I said before, like the team didn't get the results that we wanted as on the whole, and it meant that most of the sort of chat around rowing was negative, and it's a shame because everyone, they are top athletes, and they, from some countries, one boat even qualifying to the Olympics is amazing, right? Mm-hmm. And for many other countries to get people in the A final was amazing. Well, all of our crews were in the A final. Every single crew was, apart from the women's 8. Every crew was in the A final pretty much, right?
So it's like the curse of success, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like we, it's greed, it's arrogance almost to expect that we should always be winning when everyone's there trying to win.
Yeah,
everyone there is really good and they're trying to win, and we should be celebrating when we do win rather than like vilifying people if they don't. And that was weird, but no, it was awesome. But we came back and we raced at Henley, all three of us. Angus was at a wedding, but I was captain at Leander at the time, and once Henley was announced to be after the Olympics, I said to all the athletes in the team, it'd be really great. I know it's tough, and I know you want to have holidays and stuff, but it'd be really great if we could just stick it out for 2 more weeks and do Henley. And when I say stick it out, I mean turn up and do Henley. Like, I don't care, but the more of us we can do, the better. So I said I'd lead by example a bit, and I wanted iPod to do it. Now Angus was at a wedding, so one of the younger lads, Rory Harris from here, came and rode with us. He was great. So we kind of came back. We did have a couple of nights out, but then we were like, right, well, we need to keep in all right shape because we're going to have to do it again in a couple of weeks.
You don't want to embarrass yourself.
Yeah, exactly. You don't want to come back for the Olympics with a silver medal and then not win at Henley, right? So we came back and it was hard. We did have a hard race against an Irish crew, but we thankfully came away with a medal. But I guess, I took a few months to figure out to confirm that I didn't want to continue. I didn't think I did want to, but and if I was going to continue, some things were going to have to be different in how the team runs stuff, and those things aren't different. So for me, was kind of game over. Like that sealed the deal. Like, sorry, Susie. Yeah, for me, a few of those things were like non-negotiables. If I wanted to continue, I wanted there to be a bit more autonomy, a bit more flexibility in how things are, and a bit more specialized training programs or individualized training programs, which, it was made quite clear that there wasn't going to be. So I thought, well, that's me. that's fine. I'm delighted. I've had a great time. I want to stop. And then it's like, where do you start? What's next? Like, I've got a degree, but kind of what do you want to do? What do you want to do? And what's your priority? And I found a job. I did this one job for about 8 months, was fine. I did and I started speaking at a lot of events. So people would invite me to come and talk at companies or talk at schools or rowing clubs. And, I've had an eventful time rowing. So I have quite a lot of insights and stories to share. And, if I'm doing it at a dinner or something, I've got quite a lot of funny stories, which I won't have on the internet, but I will share in person, which I'm very happy, are quite good ones. And so I did a bit of that. But then I found after a while, actually, there was a bit of tough time of transition, because to start with, it was great. The first year, easy. It was like, I finished on my terms. I got what I wanted. I finished still loving the sport. Like many rowers, I think, have stopped and don't want to do it anymore. I love rowing. I still go rowing all the time. That was great. But then after a while, I started to realize, like, hang on a minute, I don't really know quite what my balance is in life. Like when you were training, it was very strict. Your day was pretty full. And the time that wasn't full, it was obvious that weren't meant to be filling it. Yeah, it's rest. That's where you rest and you just eat well. Whereas then it became like, right, well, what's a normal amount of sleep to get each night? What's a normal amount of food to eat? And you notice your body start changing a bit. Like sometimes you get a bit bigger, sometimes a bit smaller. Your muscles are weaker. That was a bit weird. How much is a normal amount of alcohol to drink? Like all these sort of things, you don't know normal because you've not been living normal. And sort of, for me, it took I had a bit of a wobble, like about the people in your life as well. Who are your closest friends? Who are the people you care about? Who do you want to surround yourself with? And where do you want to be? All these things that were already, were kind of decided for you for a long time. It took a bit of like learning of what's my normal. So that was a bit of a wobble, but now I feel I'm kind of out the other end of that and feeling pretty good in my life.
I think it's funny, like, when you go on training camps, you don't even choose who you win with. You just get told.
Choice anyway. Yeah. Absolutely nothing's your choice. I used to long to, like, camps were great, but halfway through, I'd kind of be like, I would like to just cook one meal for myself, because then I'm choosing what it is. Even though the food was great, it was like, I wasn't complaining about it, and there was always something I'd like. It was kind of, I just wanted something to be in my hands.
Yeah. That's interesting. And then, I mean, like you said, like that's a lot of those things is that people get to grips with in their teens or when they go to uni. But if you you've gone straight from junior to under 20 senior team, you've skipped that bit. Yeah,
like of course I lived away from home and did things, but sort of the having
free will
and less structure to things it was like, to start with, I went too far. And I was like, oh, well, I'm going to go out this much, like all the time. I'm going to do this. I'm going to eat all this. And I was like, hang on a minute. After a while, I was like, well, I'm drinking too much. I'm eating too much. I'm spending too much. Everything was a bit too much. And then I was like, apart from I was not sleeping enough, probably. And it kind of took it took some time to kind of get around that. But now it's good. But I think just for people who are watching this, who are in the team, if you're any of them that are still watching right now, I think it's just important to keep an eye on what you're going to be doing afterwards, and not like, okay, of course, think about what career you want to do. Like that's the obvious bit, but thinking about like how do I want my life to look, and what's just being a bit aware of those sort of things, because it took me by surprise. I thought I'd be the last person to struggle with it at all.
I think everyone does it in some way, like loss of purpose, loss of self.
Yeah.
Difficult. You don't know what your interests are because it's just been rowing the entire time. You don't know what you're not naturally good at outside of rowing. Maybe you're an artsy person. Maybe you want to do a bit of science. Like you're just lost. You're just sort of like wandering in the dark, just figuring out like.
I remember thinking, just like thinking like every hour of my day that was involved in rowing.
Yeah,
I'm thinking like whilst I finish like next week, like I'm going to have all of those. I'm going to have like another 30 hours of like spare. I was like, I'm going to do. Then I'm going to try. I'm going to play basketball. I'm going to go play rugby. I'm going to do all these things, and then it just fills up.
Yeah, you're right. I think actually, a lot of times you actually have less time now than when you're rowing.
I remember I went back to the team I was doing the ergs at Caversham. I bumped into Will Satch, and he was like, "Oh, how's it going? Like how's life after rowing? Is it fun? Like doing all sorts of stuff?" And I was like, "It is great, but it is busy, and I'm working on my own business and all sorts of things. And I do catch myself sometimes on a Wednesday thinking, I wish I just had a half hour."
Yeah, well,
I wish I just had a half hour to go and hurt
There's
myself.
some things I miss. Like I miss feeling as fit and strong as I used to be, because I'm never going to be that again, right? And that's weird, because you're used to being able to, like, if someone has said to you when you're an athlete, oh, go and run a marathon now, you'd be like, well, all right, you just go and do it.
It's annoying, but I can do it. Yeah.
It's like, or I miss, like, I really miss being able to have a nap during the middle of the day. That was great. I miss, having a half day after, like, you'd have a very hard session on a Wednesday, but having the afternoon off, like, wouldn't mind that.
Yeah.
But now I can take holiday when I want to, right? And I can, if I want to have a little bit of a later night, that's fine. It's not like my whole next day's training is going to be screwed. I'll just be a little bit tired when I wake up, whatever. At the weekends, I can, when I first started working, it didn't even feel like I needed holiday, because I got 2 days every weekend, which felt really novel.
Yeah.
There are definitely some really exciting things about not being an athlete, but of course I miss, like I said, I'd love to be lining up in Lucerne this weekend and being in and among it in the men's quads. Like, it's a great feeling.
Yeah.
But also you forget how hard it is.
Yeah.
Like I got reminded at Henley last week, it's bloody hard. It's bloody hard. It hurts.
It's a lot, definitely.
Yeah.
I remember Beachy saying one time he subbed into a ladies' plate after he's been not rowing for a few years. Matt Beachy, Leander Club head coach, and then you just said one thing. It was like, I forgot how much it hurts. That's it.
It's hard.
You got to jump on the ergo once, twice a year just to remember why you don't want to do it anymore.
Yeah, I haven't been on an ergo in a while. I'm still avoiding that.
You can just do it all a lot easier now. That's the thing. You can still just go on there and just take it easy. And I think, like, one of the things I like to share with especially young people when I talk about rowing and talk about my experiences with them is like, or what I guess I would kind of end this with my last important thing is saying is, like, I've had a great time rowing. Like I said, if I could be 20 again, I'd do it all over. But in fact, if I could be 10 again and live the last 19 years from learning to row and do it, I'd do it all over again. It was so much fun. I think, like, what I say to people at like a school or something, if you can have like 1/10 as much fun as I've had rowing, you're going to have an awesome time, because it's a great sport. Like, I've made the best friends doing it. Like, I've been to amazing places. I've pushed myself to places I never thought or didn't know about. I've met this great community of people who aren't necessarily my friends, but like people that you know around from all these different clubs and different boat manufacturers or different sort of areas still within the sport. All the volunteers, they're so lovely. It's so cool and so helpful. And I think we've got a really great bunch of people in the sport. I think we have like people who want to do good, but also want to have fun while doing it. And I feel so fortunate to have had my time in the sport, and would encourage anyone that's here thinking, oh, it's a bit hard at the moment, thinking of sacking it off. Don't. It's really cool. Just find a way to make it work for you. It doesn't have to be a billion sessions a week. Rowing can be in so many different ways. It doesn't have to be aiming for the Olympics. It can be going out for a drink and then going out for a row for half an hour and then going to the pub. It can be anything, but like, it's a great place to be.
Definitely. And like even like just rowing in the autumn, like, it's just so beautiful, like you said, just to go down on the Henley stretch and just see the mist and just enjoy the flat water.
Some of the things we see rowing, like some of those scenes, like next time you go out rowing, just forget about the speed for a row. Just enjoy. Okay, there's a bit of a caveat because you need it to be a nice enough day, but like, enjoy your surroundings, enjoy some of the things you hear and see and like smell, even, like, apart from maybe the Thames at the moment, but like enjoy that. It's a beautiful sport.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Jack. This has been awesome. I think we got to go with the quick-fire questions.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just to finish up.
If you don't mind, what's your favorite rowing venue that you've been at, trained at, visited at, or raced at?
I think Varese. Yeah, I loved it in Varese. Really, really loved it there. It's beautiful. Absolutely beautiful.
Awesome. If you were to do one regatta again when you're like 60, what would it be and why?
A regatta again when I'm 60. Do I have to be 60 years old doing it, or do I go back to being fit?
Imagine yourself being fit, but like it's like the sentiment.
The one to go back, the one you do again.
it has to be Tokyo 2020. It was amazing. Like the whole thing around it, we had the four of us got on so well. It was just great fun, and the racing was tough. We got what we wanted, but really, I'd love to even just be sitting around in our little apartment with the four of us. It was great fun.
Yeah. And then the one I like to ask, if you could travel back in time now to the kids, the age you were when you first fell in love with rowing, when you really were hooked, what little piece of advice would you give that kid?
You know what? I'd probably say, think about pushing with your legs rather than pulling with your body. Because I was all about trying to get, like, I don't know, I just wanted to work hard, and I always sort of tugged on it quite a bit. And if I could have just done that a little bit differently, not take away the tug, but push the legs too a little bit earlier, I think I'd have been even past.
There you go. Awesome. One last question. Who's your rowing idol and why? Like the person you've looked up to the most during your career?
The most. I have several, right?
Several is good enough.
I hate to say this because I work for him now and it's really annoying, but Alan Campbell was amazing, right? And just dogged, and just he would go for it and just never leave anything on the water. But really, when I was growing up, like people like Pete Reed and Alex Gregory were really inspirational because they were rowing, they were winning gold medals. They were just, they were the sort of people you'd see on posters or interviews of, and you couldn't really get away from them. If you watched rowing, it was them.
Yeah.
Right. And then of course Catherine Granger too, because that was just cool. Her winning the gold medal in London was like the most inspiring thing I've seen in rowing.
Awesome. Like, Jack, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Like, I've really enjoyed listening to your story and just be able to like bounce ideas off and off and just like explore some topics. And I think it's also really important to like share the knowledge and also share how fun rowing can be, because I think one of the premises for starting this podcast was the fact that rowing doesn't get enough recognition outside of the sport. There's not enough spotlight on it. And I think if more people would find it, it would be more likely that they will catch the bug and also enjoy the sport and the community and keep growing and hopefully like keep expanding, and it can draw more people in. So again, it's been awesome.
Well, how about like people watching this? Why don't you try and bring a friend, right? Or speak to a friend that doesn't row and say, why don't you give it a go? Like, why not?
Yeah, drag someone along. It's a wicked sport. We
yeah.
love it.
And maybe anyone that might be watching that is in charge of a club, why don't we try and have a policy of bring a friend and have another learn to row group for friends of members of the club? That'd be great, wouldn't it? Like, we will.
Yeah.
So there's lots more to it about having space for all these people in the clubs, but we can make rowing a bigger and more diverse sport.
Yeah, like even like some Saturday afternoon barbecues and that type of thing. Cool. Well, obviously, really appreciate your time. If people do want to like book you out for private speeches or to go and like do some storytelling, like where the stories that we can't show on a podcast,
if you want to get the real gossip, juicy bits,
I can give the real gossip. You got to pay for that, right? So I'm very happy to speak to all sorts of audiences, and I'm very experienced in it now as well. The best way to contact me is best is to email me at jack.beaumont@olympian.org. Otherwise, you can find me on Twitter or Instagram pretty easily as well.
Awesome. Like your Instagram's handle's already attached in the video. So
yeah, wicked. Thanks for
great.
Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Awesome. So on that note, easy there.
Cue the music.